When Harold and Todd got back to Harold's office, they found Cameron and Theodore laughing and having a great time. What you said makes perfect sense, Cameron had been saying. Theodore laughed uproariously and waved his hand. So many parents worry about that, he observed. I can assure you that our teachers are consummate professionals with additional expertise in a lot of different subject areas. Cameron nodded, satisfied. Theodore felt quite comfortable with Cameron, which made his job a lot easier. All that remained was for Emily to make a similar connection with her teacher. Mr. Mackey, Harold said, clearing his throat. Ah, there you are, Harold. Theodore replied. And Todd as well. Let's get the paperwork formalities settled for the Lee family. Todd helped himself to the edge of Harold's desk while he arranged the necessary forms for Cameron and Jessica to sign. Good morning, Mr. Lee, Miss Renshaw, Todd said, handing pens and a sheaf of paper to Cameron and Jessica. The second page is the most important one. It has lines for your emergency contact information and any health concerns that your daughter might have. Anything else can be initialed, with signatures needed on the last page. Of course, Cameron replied. He and Jessica filled out the forms together, signed them, and handed them back to Todd. Todd looked the documents over and nodded. Everything looks good, he remarked with a smile. Classes start in 4 days. There's an orientation session the day before, which we strongly urge all parents to attend. Theodore hesitated before discussing the next requirement. About the doctor's note, he began. Technically, that's due tomorrow. We'll get that to you on time, don't worry, Jessica assured him, cutting him off. All right then. Todd gathered his papers and looked around the room. Emily's teacher will likely have some more questions for you, but I've got everything I need. Thank you, and welcome to Waterstone Academy. Theodore got up from his seat. Would you like to meet Emily's teacher? I'd be happy to show you around. No, I had a good look around yesterday, Cameron replied. We have a busy day ahead of us, so I think we'll go now. He stood up and grasped Emily's hand. No problem at all, Mr. Lee, Theodore responded. I'll show you out. After Theodore had walked them out, everyone said their goodbyes. As soon as Jessica, Emily, and Cameron were in the car, Jessica exhaled loudly. I'm glad that's all set, she commented. Cameron, you weren't kidding when you said we had a lot to do. School shopping, a doctor's appointment, and that's just off the top of my head. Olaf followed them briefly before turning off at the highway on the ramp. Emily saw him waving at Cameron before he turned off. Daddy, why aren't we going that way? Emily asked. We have a couple of stops to make before we go home, honey, he explained. Where are we going? Is there an amusement park? Emily inquired, ever hopeful for a ride on a Ferris wheel. We're going right here, Cameron replied, turning into a large parking lot. What is this place? Emily asked, staring up at the office building next to the parking lot. Daddy, do you work here? Cameron chuckled. No, Emmy, I don't work here. This is City Hall. Your mother and I need to pick something up. Jessica grinned and met Cameron's eyes in the rearview mirror. Come on, you two, Cameron said, getting out of the car. We have important business to attend to. He opened the rear door of the car with a flourish and held out his hand to Jessica. What kind of business? Emily asked curiously. You'll see, Jessica replied mysteriously. Cameron grabbed a folder from the back seat before locking up the car and walking toward the entrance to City Hall, hand in hand with Jessica and Emily. Olaf watched from across the street, where he had parked in a scheduled spot. He had purposely driven away from Cameron at the highway on-ramp, but had circled back right away to see where they were going. Oh, to be young and in love, he told Teresa, who was sitting next to him. She hoped that one day she and Olaf could share their lives the way Cameron and Jessica did. But she knew Olaf had too much respect for his wife's memory to do anything for a while. Also, he wasn't sure how his daughter would take it. Maybe when she's out of school, she thought. Inside City Hall, Cameron studied the directory in the lobby before going over to the elevators. Once they arrived upstairs, there was a bit of a wait at the window before they could fill out the application they needed. Finally, it was Cameron and Jessica's turn. They handed over the application and supporting documents to the bored-looking clerk, who reviewed them, keyed the information into her computer, and stamped the form with a large, noisy, old-fashioned rubber stamp. She left her window for a moment to retrieve the finalized certificate. Congratulations, the clerk commented as she handed over the marriage license. Thank you, Cameron replied, tucking the license into his coat pocket. He took Jessica's and Emily's hands and started down the hallway to the elevators. What was that for? Emily asked. What did you get, Daddy? Your mother and I just got our marriage license, Cameron told Emily. That means we can get married, and the three of us can officially become a family. But we're already a family, Daddy, Emily remarked, puzzled. Jessica kneeled down to explain. Of course we are, honey, she assured her. But not everyone knows that. By getting the license and then having the wedding, everyone will know and be happy for us. Emily thought about that while they rode the elevator back down to the lobby. When they stepped back out into the sunshine, she said, I think I get it. We're going to be a family, and everyone will know and be happy, right? That's right, Emmy, Cameron replied. When they returned to the restaurant, Cameron waved a marriage license at Thomas, Melissa, and the others before filing it away until the big day. The rest of them had known Cameron would be applying for the marriage license that day, but seeing it in his hands was true confirmation, and they all cheered. The elder Renshaws were generally quite pleased with Cameron as a future son-in-law and couldn't wait to celebrate at the wedding. Later in the afternoon, Cameron, Jessica, and Emily went shopping for school supplies and other necessities. That evening, Cameron cooked a few extra dishes to celebrate. The next morning, Emily had to go to the doctor's office for her school physical. As luck would have it, she was due for a few shots. The needles made her anxious, and Cameron covered her eyes and tried to console her as much as possible. I'd rather take the shots myself than see her upset like this, he thought. Afterward, Jessica, Cameron, and Emily went sailing to take Emily's mind off the doctor's visit and take advantage of one of the last free days before Emily started kindergarten. That evening, the marquee on the building adjacent to the restaurant was lit up. Part of it spelled Emmy's Cafe in bold colors, and the rest advertised Zoe's bar, Moonshadow. The Moonshadow sign flickered with a tempting offer of free tables during their first few weeks. Word of the new venue had spread rapidly, probably thanks to the proximity of Emmy's Cafe. The restaurant was so popular that people regularly lined up outside to get in, and it wasn't unusual for people to be turned away. Some of those people naturally gravitated to Moonshadow, including more than a few high rollers who had missed out on restaurant memberships. On the first night, the bar was open for business, and a number of people wandered in, either from curiosity or a desire for drinks before dinner at Emmy's. Zoe had rounded out her staff with people from the Starry Sky Bar. Lucy was the head bartender, and Zoe had hired 2 DJs to help her with the entertainment side of things. The first floor had a large open dance floor with a spacious bar off to the side. Smaller rooms for private parties had been set up on the second floor. Derek, formerly with the Starry Sky Bar, stopped to admire the decor. I love how this turned out, he said to Zoe. We can fit a lot of people in here without it feeling crowded, and the tables and lights look just right. Let me know if you need more help, Zoe told him. I don't want a single customer to leave here unhappy. Ash, Bogdan, and a few others from ELS had come in to rest between shifts and overheard Zoe and Derek chatting. Spare no expense, Derek, Ash told him. Cameron wants this to be perfect. He'll do anything for Zoe. We've known Zoe longer than you have, David added. Let's make this place a rousing success. Bogdan put his arm around Derek's shoulder. Above all else, keep an eye on who comes in here. We want Moonshadow to be the safest nightclub in town. I'll do my best, Derek replied. Just then, a group of 7 or 8 rough-looking men came in the door. They helped themselves to a prime table and ordered pitchers of beer. When the beer arrived, one of the new arrivals took a sip and spat it out. You call this beer? He asked sarcastically. That's what you ordered, sir, the server replied. Didn't you hear what I just said? The man asked. This tastes like crap. I'm not paying for this. He tossed the drink onto the floor, sending shards of glass and puddles of Pilsner everywhere. I'm sorry, sir. We can get you something else, the server responded, looking around nervously. Don't bother. The man sneered as he stood. His companions stood as well, all of them towering over the petite server. This attracted the attention of everyone in the nightclub, including Bogdan, who rolled his eyes and sighed. Well, that figures, he muttered. As soon as I say something about this being the safest nightclub in town, look what walks in. Bogdan effortlessly took the lead, striding forward so swiftly that Derek, David, and the others could barely keep up with him. Meanwhile, the troublemaker, Tyrell, showed no signs of backing down without a fight. His eyes wide and menacing, he swung open a door with force. Just as his hand was reaching toward a waiter, his 3 accomplices were suddenly pushed aside. Simultaneously, Bogdan's hand, strong as iron, clamped onto Tyrell's wrist, rendering it immobile. The sharp, unexpected pain twisted Tyrell's face. His companions prepared to attack, and they cried out to their friends to be ready for a fight. At that moment, a blond man, clearly bewildered, asked, "Aren't you Bogdan Ioscu?" The name left everyone stunned. They had all heard of Bogdan, who had until recently been one of Tommy Tang's men. Only a few months before, he had left his old life behind, partnering with Mickey Fang to start a legitimate business. Since then, Bogdan had never felt the need to lean on his previous status as an underworld criminal. He wasn't going to make any rash moves, no matter what his reputation might have been. He had too much to lose. That didn't mean that he was going to let people just walk all over him, though.
"What are you doing here?"
Bogdan asked Tyrell sharply.
"If you're looking for trouble, we'll give it to you. You'd better let go of me."
Tyrell snarled back through bare teeth. Despite his evident pain, there wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. His defiance made Bogdan even more certain that they had only turned up to cause trouble. He tightened his grip in response. "Nobody moves!" A stern voice suddenly commanded. Everyone turned to find Ash and a group of Derek's men rapidly approaching. Ash's imposing demeanor stopped everyone in their tracks, and the attention turned back to Tyrell.
"Who are you working for?"
Bogdan asked.
"Who sent you?"
"You'll find out soon enough," Tyrell responded. "You do well to cool down, Bogdan, and let me go. My buddy Clyde is on his way." He was clearly in an uncomfortable amount of pain, yet his voice managed to maintain its unwavering tone. Bogdan let go of Tyrell's arm, a smirk tugging at his lips.
"Is that so?"
he asked. He patted Tyrell on the chest and taunted him lightly.
"It's funny," he said. "You know exactly who I am, yet you're still so stubborn. This isn't going to end well for you."
"We'll see," Tyrell said, massaging his sore wrist. "You're the ones who seem to be looking for trouble." Ash bristled, his eyes wide and threatening. "You came here to us," he said. "If you want to fight, we'll give you one." Bogdan patted him reassuringly on the shoulder.
"There's no point us wasting our time with this kind of small fry,"
he suggested.
"Why don't we step outside and wait for this friend of theirs?"
He led the way out of the building and into the parking lot, followed by Tyrell and his crew, where 3 black sedans were pulling up. 9 men stepped out, led by a wiry, bearded man in short sleeves, his arms covered with tattoos. He surveyed the scene before leading his men toward Bogdan's group. "Hey, Clyde!" called Tyrell. He tried to take a step forward.
"Did I say you can move? Stay still,"
Bogdan commanded. His left hand shot out with lightning speed, grabbing the man's head. With a cry of pain, Tyrell was forced to half kneel on the ground. Ignoring him, Bogdan turned his attention to the newcomer. "Bogdan, what's going on?" Clyde stuttered as a flash of surprise crossed his face. "Let's not do anything stupid. What's the problem here? Have my friends upset you?" "Leave it to me. I'll have a word with them." His expression was exaggerated, but there was no fear in his eyes. He was clearly putting on a show. "Don't play coy," Ash interjected. His eyebrows nodded in irritation. "Who the hell are you? Just spit it out. We don't have time to waste on this kind of nonsense."
"I'd watch your tone if I were you."
One of the men beside Clyde barked back, reaching toward his waist. "Pipe down," Clyde snapped, slapping the man around the back of the head. He turned to Bogdan with a laugh and said, "No Mickey today?"
"Get to the point before I lose my patience,"
Bogdan said. Clyde obviously knew he was connected to Mickey, but that didn't go any way to explaining what they were doing there. "There's nothing to say," Clyde said, shrugging with feigned innocence. "We heard this place was opening, and we wanted to show our support. We respect you and Mickey. What's the big deal?" Bogdan studied Clyde for a moment, and then he asked slowly,
"Are you from the bar down the street?"
Clyde froze, caught off guard, and Bogdan sighed inwardly. He still had the sharp instincts of the underworld. They had obviously turned up to try and turn the screws on their new competition. Clyde was about to reply when Bogdan cut him off.
"Who are you working for?"
he asked. "You really are out of touch," Clyde replied with a smile. "New Moon Bay is now under Thrasher's control." Bogdan pushed further.
"Who's Thrasher? One of Grayson's men?"
Clyde laughed. "Grayson?" he asked mockingly. "He's history. What do you mean by that?" Ash inquired. He glared at Clyde, his body radiating a dominance that caused the man's expression to flicker momentarily. "Grayson's finished," Clyde repeated. "His reign is over, and now New Moon Bay belongs to Thrasher. Bogdan's frown deepened. Ash, who owed Grayson his life, was equally shocked. He didn't understand why Grayson hadn't reached out to them if he was in trouble. For a moment, neither of them felt like arguing anymore. Noticing the change in their demeanor, Clyde allowed a smug smile to creep onto his face. After all, the victors wrote history, and Bogdan and Ash were now a thing of the past. Their time had been and gone. Before the conversation could go any further, the sound of a roaring motorcycle interrupted them. A bike sped up to them, coming to a sharp halt as the rider jumped off and strode over. Before Clyde could utter another word, he was slapped hard around the face. The sudden action left him speechless. He hadn't known that Thrasher was going to turn up, but if he had, he certainly wouldn't have expected that kind of reaction. Ash, Bogdan, and the others shifted their attention to the new arrival. She was dressed in a leather suit that stretched taut over an unusually curvaceous figure. The crowd watched curiously as Thrasher slowly removed her helmet. Ash's eyes widened in surprise as recognition set in. It was Juliet Thrasher, Grayson's girlfriend, who Ash and Bogdan had only ever seen once before. She was a figure shrouded in mystery. Ash had always suspected her of being more than she seemed, and now, sensing her energy, it was clear that she was a fighter, and a powerful one at that. He watched with interest as Juliet turned to Clyde and demanded an explanation. Seeing her pull a dagger from her sleeve and threaten Clyde, Bogdan's expression hardened. He was surprised by her ruthlessness. Before he could react, however, Ash quickly whispered something in his ear, prompting Bogdan to let go of Tyrell's head. "My cousin owns a bar nearby," Clyde began, nervously explaining the situation. "We heard this place was opening. We were hoping to discuss how we might work together to our shared advantage." It seemed ridiculous, but Clyde decided that it was just believable enough to pass as an excuse. Juliet wasn't buying it. "I'm giving you 3 days to close down your cousin's bar," she said firmly. Clyde's face fell. "But Thrasher, that's..." Her glare silenced him. "I understand," he agreed reluctantly. Juliet turned to Bogdan and Ash. "I apologize for my associates' ignorance. They're obviously unaware of Mr. Lee's presence and your status here. I'm sorry for the trouble they've caused." Clyde and his companions were rapidly realizing that they had made a serious error in judgment. There was a significance to the place they had entirely failed to appreciate. Bogdan waved off her apology. "It's a misunderstanding," he said. "No need to dwell on it." The group had visibly relaxed. "All of you, get out of here," Juliet commanded in irritation. "Yes, Thrasher," they replied in unison, quickly getting into their cars and speeding off. Bogdan gestured to his men, indicating that they could go inside. Once everyone had left, Ash turned to Juliet. "What's going on? What's happened to Grayson?" he asked. Juliet hesitated before starting to explain the situation. It turned out that Grayson's new team harbored several spies from rival factions, operating underhanded business dealings on the sly and trading in Grayson's name, and their influence was spreading. Therefore, Grayson had put Juliet in charge of keeping an eye on them, concerned that his operations at New Moon Bay might spiral into chaos. If anything went awry, she would be there to step in and clean up the mess. And that's all there is to it, Juliet said with a smirk. "Anyway, I'd best be off. I need to go and teach those morons a lesson." "Sure, go ahead," Ash and Bogdan replied together. Juliet pulled her helmet back on, swung her leg over her bike, and roared off into the distance. "I swear every woman who rides a bike has a backstory," Ash mused, scratching his head as he watched Juliet fade into the distance. "She seems like quite a woman. How did Grayson manage to snag a woman like that?" Bogdan wondered aloud in confusion. "I wouldn't have thought he had it in him." With a slight shake of his head, Bogdan fell into step beside Ash as they headed back inside. The most important thing was that they had managed to see off the incident without any trouble. If anything, it had turned out to be a non-issue. They were actually quite relieved to hear that Grayson had appointed Juliet to oversee New Moon Bay. They settled back down into a normal evening. The bar was bustling with customers, drawn by the fair prices and excellent wine. Members of the security bureau sauntered in, looking for a night of fun. Everything was peaceful once again. The following morning, Thomas and Melissa made their way to the restaurant. After breakfast, Cameron casually dressed, gathered up the princess-themed bedding and blanket he had prepared the day before. He returned to his second-floor bedroom, where Jessica was still getting ready to leave. He laughed and shook his head.
It's 8:30, he told her. We should leave now. We'll be late.
We've still got a few minutes, Jessica replied nonchalantly. Meanwhile, Emily was lounging on the living room couch. Why can't I come too? She grumbled as her parents came out of the bedroom. I want to go with you. Only parents are visiting today. We'll be back by noon, Jessica explained. You need to play nicely with Grandma and Grandpa at home. Mommy will bring back ice cream for you at lunchtime. Emily pouted slightly. Okay, but I want strawberry. Jessica nodded seriously in agreement, took Cameron's hand and led him out the door. They hopped into their car and drove off to Waterstone Academy. Arriving just before 9, they pulled up behind a line of cars near the entrance. Cameron fetched 2 bags from the trunk of the car, and they headed into the kindergarten, where over 100 parents were gathering. The crowd was a mixed bag. Most were dressed to impress, while others were in casual attire. Joining the crowd, Cameron found parents chatting in small clusters, many also toting bedding and other items. Most were young parents, but a smattering of grandparents was also there. At 9 o'clock on the dot, the principal took the stage and said, First, I want to wish you a warm welcome to the Waterstone family. I won't belabor the point about our esteemed kindergarten since I'm sure you're all familiar by now. All 5 of our class teachers are present. Once everyone lines up, you'll be assigned to your corresponding teacher. Let's begin, please. Please form 2 lines. On the principal's cue, the crowd split into 2 lines, and the class assignments began. As they reached the front of the queue, parents were matched with their teacher and directed to form 5 distinct lines. Cameron and Jessica, being late arrivals, found themselves at the back of the queue. Ultimately, the principal greeted Cameron, smiled, and announced, Class 5, Emily will be with Jenny Tabor. Thank you, Jessica replied. The 2 of them then joined the end of queue number 5. Quite a few heads turned their way, either because they recognized Jessica or were just taken by her beauty. All right, looks like everyone's sorted. I see many of you brought bedding and other items. Let's head over to the nap room first, Jenny proposed. Much like their children would shortly do, the group of parents made their way, slightly apprehensively, to the nap room. Jenny stationed herself at the doorway of the plushly carpeted room, handing out slippers as she explained, Bed assignments have been done at random. Each bed is labeled with a child's name. If you brought luggage, you can set it on their bed. We'll distribute uniforms this afternoon once the luggage is cleared. The group donned their slippers and filed into the room. Where's Emily's bed? Jessica asked as they entered. Over there. Cameron pointed toward a small bed at the front, nestled in the center of the 3rd row. The perfect spot, Jessica commented, leading the way with a satisfied smile. The strategic location of the 3rd row, near the teacher's table, wasn't lost on her. Some parents, unhappy with the back row corners, kept their disappointment to themselves. After all, it had all been done at random. Cameron proceeded to unpack the blanket and bedding, folding them meticulously before placing them on Emily's bed. Once he was satisfied with his work, he patted the bedding lightly and turned to Jessica. What do you think? Not bad, right? Very good, Cameron, Jessica replied with a hint of condescension. It was just bedding. There were no prizes involved. Okay, everyone, Jenny announced, clapping her hands to gather attention. Let's head out. Cameron studied Jenny closely. The subtle similarities in the arch of her brows hinted at a familial connection, indicating that Jenny was most likely Morgan's granddaughter. Jenny's features were quite distinct, and her bright eyes radiated an energetic spirit. What is it? Jessica asked. Cameron put a hand on his waist and turned to Jessica. What are you looking at? She asked again. Suddenly, he felt a sense of impending danger. I know her grandfather, he confessed quietly. Oh, you know her grandfather, Jessica teased, a playful smile lighting up her face. You know everyone, don't you? Cameron glanced around in surprise, sure that no one was watching. He discreetly moved his right hand and playfully swatted Jessica on the bottom. Watch it, you, he said mischievously. Jessica rolled her eyes at him. Stop it, she said. There are people everywhere. Behave yourself. Cameron laughed, unable to keep his amusement in check. Then, lowering his voice, he continued. I ran into her grandfather the other day. He's an experienced fighter. He's also the custodian here. The pair continued to whisper to each other at the back of the group. Meanwhile, Jenny played the role of tour guide, explaining the kindergarten layout to the parents. They soon arrived at the main classroom. Inside were 2 long, white semicircular tables, slightly lower than an average desk. In front of them stood a podium accompanied by a uniquely framed whiteboard. The room was fully equipped with a projector, computer speakers, and everything else required for high-quality teaching and learning. Once everyone had settled down, Jenny unveiled the projector screen. After pressing a few buttons on the remote control, a code was projected onto the screen. Allow me to formally introduce myself. I'm Jenny Tabor, and I'll be the teacher in charge of Class 5. Jenny placed both hands in front of her, offering a warm smile as she continued. This is my QR code for our school management system. Please add me and include your name and the name of your child. Below is my phone number so I can keep you updated on any matters concerning your child. A chorus of swishing noises filled the room as every parent brought out their phones to add Jenny. Jessica took out her phone, scanned the QR code, and added a note that said, Emily's mother. Cameron did the same, adding the note, Emily's father. After doing that, he also took the opportunity to scan the room. Aside from Jenny, there were 36 people in total. Most were parents who had come personally. A lot of them looked fairly wealthy. A few looked rather ordinary, while at least one couple were the parents of an international student. A kindergarten like Waterstone attracted families from all over the world. Regardless of their backgrounds, everyone listened attentively to Jenny without any side conversations. It was clear that they were deeply invested in their children's education. Now, let's go over some things that, as parents, you'll need to be aware of, Jenny continued. There may be some kids who aren't used to being away from their parents yet, so we need to exercise extra care. The first day of school can be a shock for them, but it's crucial that parents slip away quickly from their child's sight. I believe our nurturing environment will soon help them adapt to their new collective life. When picking up and dropping off your child, try not to rush. If any conflicts arise among the children, we ask parents to remain calm. Our teachers will address any issues, so there's no need to make a big deal out of it. As for mealtime, we have Emmanuel, our school chef, an internationally renowned nutritionist. He creates a fantastic balanced lunch for the kids. If you'd like to provide a meal, you're welcome to drop it off with the security guards at noon. Just make sure your child's name is written on the lunchbox. Regarding pickup and drop-off, I hope that parents can develop a routine sooner rather than later. At the end of the day, ask your child if they learned anything useful. They need your encouragement and praise. With that, Jenny finished speaking. Every parent intently listened as if they were attending a seminar. Some even took out their notebooks to jot down the key points of Jenny's speech. A few parents voiced their concerns, which Jenny patiently addressed one by one. By around 10:15, Jenny clapped her hands again and smiled reassuringly. Now, she announced, let's move to the auditorium for this year's welcoming ceremony. With that, the group rose and followed Jenny out of the room. In the auditorium, a stream of parents trickled in. Because there were 100 newly enrolled children, nearly 200 people filed in together. There was a row of tables set up on the stage, with the principal and vice principal seated in the middle. Around them were some of the key teaching and support staff. In total, there were more than 20 people on stage. Once all the parents had gathered, at 10:30, the principal stood up, microphone in hand. I'd like to extend another warm welcome to all the parents here today. I'm Harold Wise, the principal. This institution was established 20 years ago with a substantial personal investment from our founder, Theodore. We have nearly 100 outstanding professionals, from educational experts to doctors specializing in child development. Our goal isn't to profit, but to nurture our children in every possible way. Harold was quite familiar with the long history of Waterstone, having previously served as Theodore's assistant while the school was still in the development stage. The establishment of Waterstone Academy had, in fact, required a colossal investment, which was practically Theodore's entire fortune. He had intended to make a name for himself in education, and over the past few years, his network had expanded throughout San Diego, making him a well-known figure in the city. After his opening remarks, Harold began the introductions. I now turn the floor over to Mrs. Welsh. A 40-year-old woman in a suit stood up, activated the projector, and began her presentation. As you all may know, she said, a child's learning capacity is incredibly strong. A teacher's role is vital, but even more crucial is the involvement of parents. By age 7, a child's personality begins to solidify. So this period is key. Mrs. Welsh spoke for about 5 minutes, using some very specialized terms. Soon, it was time for others to take the floor. By the time everyone had finished speaking, it was nearly midday, and the parents filed out and made their way home. After getting back into the car, Jessica pressed her lips together in worry. Emmy starts school tomorrow. she said. Just thinking about it makes me nervous. What if she starts crying?
We'll have to wait and see.
Cameron replied with a sigh. He was also worried about how Emily would react to being left at the kindergarten without him or Jessica. They said little on the way home. The thought of Emily starting school stirred complex emotions within them, especially Jessica. She realized that as time passed, Emily would eventually go from kindergarten to elementary school, then to high school, university, and finally into adulthood. Sometimes she wished Emily could grow up faster, but other times she longed for her to remain the carefree little girl she was at that moment. It was a conflict of emotions. Cameron felt much the same. Since he had been introduced to his daughter, he had cherished each moment with her. The thought of her going off to school all day seemed premature to him. The next day, after breakfast, Emily hummed a tune with a look of innocent excitement on her face. She still hadn't realized that there would be no parents at kindergarten. Jessica finished working on Emily's hair, leaving 2 neat braids on either side of her head. The little girl wore a short-sleeved top, a thin, milky white jacket, blue jeans, and small white sneakers. "All right," she said. "Let's see if you like how it looks." Emily looked in the mirror and gave Jessica her approval on a job well done. "Daddy, isn't that my backpack? Why are you wearing it?" Emily asked in surprise.
"Just because it's a bit heavy for you still,"
Cameron replied with a laugh. "But shouldn't I be carrying it?" Emily insisted. "Let her carry it," Jessica chimed in with a smile.
"All right, give me a moment."
Cameron hurried into the bedroom with the backpack. It was filled with water bottles, a change of clothes, and various school supplies, but Cameron had a plan. A few minutes later, he returned with the backpack and handed it to Jessica. Once Jessica checked the bag and gauged its weight, she looked at Cameron, smiling. It felt as if there was practically nothing left in there. Jessica handed Emily the bag and said, "Here's your backpack. Can you manage it?" "It's not heavy at all," Emily exclaimed. "This is easy." The 2 parents looked at each other knowingly and then turned their attention back to Emily.
"Give me a little spin so I can see," Cameron said. "You look great in your new school clothes."
"Do you really think so?" Emily asked. "I'm not a baby anymore. Here, let me take a picture." Jessica pulled out her phone and aimed it at Emily. Emily placed her hands on her hips and grinned at the camera. "All right, got it," Jessica said, looking at the photo and smiling as she put her phone away. "Wait, let's take a photo with Daddy too," Emily said.
"Coming right up."
Cameron smiled and walked over to Emily. "Let's pretend we're tigers, Daddy." Emily stretched out her 2 small hands and made clawing gestures at either side of her face, mimicking the pose and opening her mouth wide as if she were a cute little tiger ready to pounce. Emily paused for a moment before urging Cameron on. "Daddy, come on, be a tiger."
All right,
Cameron said, extending his hands and mimicking the little tiger's pose. Jessica couldn't help but burst out laughing. So funny to see Cameron acting that way. On his own, he might have seemed ridiculous, but paired with Emily beside him, it was just adorable. "Right, let's go to school," Jessica said as she put her phone away. Emily almost fell down the stairs in her excitement to get to the car. It was nearly 8 o'clock and the restaurant was still bustling with customers. Seeing the family of 3 coming down the stairs, people smiled and wished Emily luck on her first day. It was the first that Donald had heard about it. "Hey, Mickey, is Emmy going to school?" he asked in surprise. "That's right," Mickey replied. "Darn, I won't be able to see her during lunch anymore then," Donald said with a grin. Sometimes when they finished lunch, and if Emily was on the first floor, he would record a short video to satisfy his fans. Ever since he shared a video of Emily with Cameron and Jessica's blessing, his popularity had skyrocketed. Just a glance at Emily was enough to gain countless followers. They made the short drive to Waterstone Academy and pulled up outside the gate alongside a whole host of luxury cars. However, the Casey Koala was truly unique. Cameron parked on a side street because the front entrance was so crowded. "Are those all reporters?" Jessica asked as she observed the crowd outside the school. "Why are there so many people?" Every year around that time, there would be reports about the start of the school year at Waterstone Academy. Of course, other kindergartens did the same thing, not just to cover the event, but also to spot any children of notable individuals attending. "Should we park the car and walk from here?" Cameron suggested after he had parked up. "Let's do it!" Emily shouted enthusiastically. Jessica hesitated. "Even though I'm in disguise, if we're spotted, paparazzi might still manage to recognize me. I don't want to cause a scene." "Why not stay in the car then?" Cameron proposed. Jessica thought for a moment before reluctantly agreeing. She reached behind her for the school bag and handed it over to Emily. "Have a great first day, Emmy," she said. "Okay, Mommy," Emily responded cheerfully. She hadn't grasped that neither of her parents would be there with her during the day. Jessica hugged Emily and then looked away as if she felt the tears welling up in her eyes. Cameron got out of the car, circled around to the passenger side, and lifted Emily up. "You've got this, Emmy," Jessica called encouragingly from the half-rolled down window. With a determined look in her eyes, Emily bid her mother farewell. The little girl held tightly onto Cameron's hand as they walked together to the entrance of Waterstone Academy. Jessica felt a surge of worry as she watched the pair disappear into the distance. However, it wasn't just a mother's separation anxiety. Something else was bothering her. Something Emily had said earlier. She couldn't put her finger on it. As she mulled it over, Cameron and Emily reached the kindergarten's front doors, their journey made easier by the lightness of Emily's backpack and the little girl's excitement. The entryway was a flurry of activity, with children and adults alike bustling about. A group of kids was congregating in a small square just off to the side. "Welcome, please find your class over there," two waiting teachers said, offering warm smiles to Cameron and Emily as they walked in. "Hello," Emily mumbled shyly, clinging to Cameron's side. "Hello. Go and find your teacher now," one of the teachers said encouragingly and cheerfully, waving them off. So, hand in hand, Cameron and Emily ventured deeper into the kindergarten. Meanwhile, a father and daughter duo behind them was simply directed to the small square with routine courtesy. The two teachers had already welcomed nearly 100 families and children that day, not all of whom they had had the chance to engage in conversation with. Emily surveyed her surroundings with interest as they ventured further in, her eyes bright with curiosity and excitement. "Daddy, look at all these kids! It's so fun!" Emily said, looking up at Cameron with a note of awe in her voice. "Is that so? Oh, as long as you're having fun. You'll be able to play games with the other kids soon," Cameron assured her with a smile. "What games will we play? Like a duck, duck, goose?" Emily inquired. "I'm sure you'll play all sorts of fun games," Cameron responded, still grinning. Initially, Cameron had been worried that Emily might have a hard time adjusting, possibly even crying as he had seen some other children doing. He couldn't help but remember how Jessica had tirelessly researched and gathered information the previous night, even taking the time to discuss things with the teacher Jenny. After Emily had been put to bed, Jessica and Cameron had talked things over, trying to anticipate how she might react to her first day of kindergarten. Now it seems that their concerns may have been slightly exaggerated. As they neared a crowd of children, Emily's bright eyes grew wide. She asked, "Daddy, why are those little boys and girls crying?" She pointed at the handful of tearful children nearby. Cameron thought back to the advice that Jenny had given them. A smile spread across his face, and he gave Emily a gentle pat on the head. "Well, they're just not as brave as you are." Emily nodded in approval, proudly declaring, "Yes, I am brave." Upon reaching Jenny, Cameron said good morning and presented Emily to her new teacher. "It's lovely to meet you, Emily," Jenny responded, giving the girl a thoughtful look. She recalled Emily from the student profiles, something she wasn't always able to do. For the first day at least, it was always hard to keep the new students in her head. She tended to remember the more distinct ones. For instance, there was a boy named Armand, notable as the only international student in the class. There was also a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy named Damon who stood out. And of course, Emily was memorable due to her striking appearance and charm. Emily looked up at Jenny uncertainly. She seemed slightly shy. But before offering a proper greeting, Cameron said, "Emily, this is Miss Tabor. She'll be your teacher from now on." "Good morning, Miss Tabor," Emily said softly. Jenny chuckled and replied, "Look, Emily, there are your new classmates. Why don't you join them in the front?" Emily looked at the other children in the line, who were also studying her in return. The crying children behind them, however, quickly drew her attention. Two adults, who appeared to be around Jenny's age, were doing their best to comfort them. Turning back to Jenny, Cameron found himself feeling anxious. It wasn't a familiar feeling to him and certainly wasn't one that he enjoyed. "Please look after her," he said. "In her bag, you'll find a water bottle and some extra clothes. Please remember that her skin is quite sensitive." Jenny offered a comforting smile. "Rest assured, we'll take good care of her. If there's anything you need to know, we'll inform you right away." Cameron nodded in response, patting Emily's head tenderly before turning to leave. However, Emily had picked up on something unusual. "Why aren't the other kids' daddies here?" Emily asked, looking up at Cameron. Jenny smiled gently. Well, Emily, that's because kindergarten is a place for kids to learn and play. Parents usually don't stay. No, Daddy? A hint of panic flashed across Emily's face as she turned to Cameron and said, Daddy, you have to stay and play with me in kindergarten.
I have to leave for a little while, but I promise to come back. I'll come to pick you up later on.
Cameron tried to explain, lowering his voice to a soothing tone. Why are you leaving? Emily asked with tears in her eyes. I want you to stay with me. You can't leave. Seeing Emily's distress, Jenny quickly intervened. She squatted down in front of Emily and gently tried to reassure her. Emily, look at your classmates. They all want to play with you, to share toys and games. They're not crying. You can be brave too, right? She subtly signaled to Cameron as she spoke, urging him to leave quickly. Cameron hesitated for a moment before patting Emily's head, his heart aching. He whispered, Emily, you're such a good girl. Daddy has to prepare lunch for you at home. I promise to be right on time to pick you up this evening. I'll be waiting for you at the door when school's over. With that, he turned and began to walk away. He had only managed a few short steps when Emily let out a heart-wrenching wail. Daddy, don't go! I won't let you leave. Come back. She reached out as if to run after him, but Jenny gently held her back, murmuring soothing words. Yet Emily continued to cry, her tears and sniffles drawing the attention of the other children, and even causing some previously crying children to stop and stare in surprise. Some parents watched on and sighed with relief that their own children hadn't cried. It was never nice to see a child in distress, but they could take comfort in the fact that at least their own children seemed well prepared for their new adventure. What they couldn't understand was that the situation was slightly different for Emily. Cameron hadn't been a part of her life for years, and the two had developed a deep attachment in a short time. Even when Jessica had gone to work, Emily hadn't shown such distress. But the thought of Cameron leaving caused the little girl to panic, fearing he would disappear forever. Cameron's heart ached as he walked away from the kindergarten. After putting some distance between himself and the school, he turned back to look at Emily. She was reaching out to him, crying out, Daddy, don't you love me anymore? Daddy, come back. Cameron froze. Then, just as the kindergarten door was about to close, he raced back. Wait! He called out as he pushed open the door and ran toward Emily. He scooped her into his arms, rubbing her head and murmuring words of comfort. I won't leave. Daddy won't leave. It's okay. Stop crying. Look, I'm back. I'm here. It's okay. Cameron's comforting words seemed to have little effect on Emily, who continued to sob, her tiny arms tightly clutching his neck. Jenny sighed. Jenny, I'm sorry. We aren't quite ready yet. We're going to head home for now. Cameron said, his voice laced with regret. It's okay. Jenny assured him with a small smile. Did you talk to Emily about any of this? You really ought to prepare her for things like this in advance. Otherwise, she might have a hard time accepting it. Yes, that was our oversight. Cameron agreed with a firm nod. We've never done this before. I understand. Well then, head home for now. When you're ready, whether it's this afternoon or tomorrow, come back and try again. Jenny suggested. Sounds good. Cameron replied, hoisting Emily up in his arms and making his way out. Jenny watched the pair leave, shaking her head with a helpless chuckle before she joined her colleagues. Gradually, Emily seemed to understand her father's intent to take her home, and her cries began to subside. No more tears. Cameron said gently, I promise you, if you don't want to go to kindergarten, then we won't, okay? Okay, Daddy, Emily replied, her voice still catching with emotion. Her arms were wrapped tightly around Cameron's neck, her head pressed close to his. Her tears had soaked his neck, and he made his way back to the car with a heavy heart. Noticing a child being carried out, a reporter at the door took a couple of snapshots before packing up to leave. Meanwhile, Jessica sat in the car's back seat, staring forward and nervously gripping the edge of the front seat. Seeing Cameron return with Emily, her face was a mix of annoyance and amusement. I should have known. The moment she sheds a tear, he can't resist, she thought. She got out of the car and went to greet them. Hearing Emily's soft sobs, Jessica bit her lip and stretched out her arms. Come here, Mommy will carry you. Let's just get in the car, Cameron grumbled, moving with Jessica to the back seats. Seeing her little girl so sad tore Jessica apart. She pulled her daughter into a comforting hug and handed her a tissue to wipe away the tears. Don't cry, she said. Be a good girl for Mommy and Daddy. But Mommy, I don't want to go to kindergarten anymore, Emily whimpered. Why not? There are so many other nice kids there for you to be friends with, Jessica coaxed. And you're going to learn so many wonderful new things. I just want to be with Daddy, Emily protested. I'm here now, so no more crying, Cameron said soothingly, gently stroking Emily's hair. After a few more minutes of coaxing, Emily's crying finally subsided. Shaking her head in an exasperated smile, Jessica affectionately ruffled Emily's hair and said, Emmy, going to kindergarten doesn't mean you won't see Daddy. He'll pick you up in the afternoon. During the day, you'll learn and play with other kids, and in the afternoon and evening, you'll be with Daddy. Emily's face scrunched up in thought. After a pause, she pouted and said, No, I just want to be with Daddy.
All right, how about I go to kindergarten with you? Cameron suggested, throwing a hesitant glance at Jessica. Before he could even finish his sentence, Jessica gave him an unhappy glare, causing him to cut himself off. Get in the car. We'll talk when we get home, Jessica commanded. Fine, Cameron responded. They all got into the car and drove off toward New Moon Bay. Emily, is the reason you don't want to go to kindergarten because you want to be with Daddy? Jessica asked. By now, realizing that they had definitely left the kindergarten, Emily's mood had brightened. She nodded vigorously and said, Yes, I want to be with Daddy. After a moment's thought, the little girl added, We should go to kindergarten together. This left Jessica in a bemused predicament. She tried another approach. But Daddy isn't allowed in kindergarten, she explained. Do you want Daddy to be happy? Yes, Emily responded promptly. Then you need to go to kindergarten and play and learn, Jessica told her. That's what will make Daddy the happiest. But, Emily hesitated, her face scrunching up again. I don't want to leave Daddy. Can I not go to kindergarten and still play and learn? That way I can be with Daddy and make him happy. Cameron couldn't help but be overjoyed. His daughter so obviously thought the world of him. Jessica was at a loss. She spent the rest of the ride trying to explain, but to no avail. When they returned to the restaurant, Thomas was surprised to see them at the entrance. You're back already? Is kindergarten over so soon? He asked curiously. Yes, I don't want to go anymore, Emily responded solemnly. Jessica just shook her head helplessly. It looked like convincing the little girl to return would be tough. Just then, her phone rang. Glancing at the screen, her face lit up, and she quickly answered. Hello? Darcy, what's up? Oh, sure, we're free. Why don't you guys come over to our place? Oh, don't worry about it. It's not a hassle at all. I actually wanted to ask you something. I'll have Cameron prepare some food. Great. See you then. After hanging up, Jessica turned to Emily with a radiant smile. It's Macy's birthday today, she explained. She wants us to celebrate with her. It's Macy's birthday? That's great. I'll sing her a birthday song, Emily replied excitedly. Jessica smiled at Emily's enthusiasm, which left Cameron a bit baffled. What are you so excited about all of a sudden? He asked. Jessica leaned toward Cameron and whispered something into his ear. Understanding dawned on his face. Macy had been in kindergarten for nearly a year, so she had some experience. Her visit might help stir Emily's interest. At 8 in the evening, Ken arrived at the restaurant with 4 bottles of wine, a 2-layer birthday cake, and a beaming birthday girl, Macy. After Mickey had welcomed them up to the 2nd floor, Macy, bursting with energy, bounded over to Emily. Hi, Emmy! Macy exclaimed. Macy! Emily cried in response. She quickly hopped off the couch, grabbed a gift box, and dashed over to her friend. Happy birthday, Macy! Oh, wow, a present? Thank you, Emmy, Macy responded, clearly thrilled with the surprise gift. You're welcome, Emily said with a laugh. Ken followed behind with the birthday supplies in his hands. I had originally planned to invite you all out, but instead I've imposed on your hospitality. I'm a bit embarrassed, he admitted. It's fine, don't mention it, Cameron told him. We're happy to see you. They had been struggling to figure out how to get Emily to accept going to kindergarten. But now, they had a clear plan. Parents often struggle to influence their children, but friends can be a powerful motivator. However, whether their plan would work remained to be seen. Thomas, Melissa, and the rest of the family joined them on the 2nd floor. Zoe was bustling around. She was off to Moonshadow after dinner. She found the place exceptionally comfortable.
The nighttime entertainment was top-notch, boasting some of the best equipment in San Diego. The layouts, the dance floors, everything had been meticulously designed by experts invited by Olaf. However, she was even more excited about the upcoming opening of the DJ Plaza. The only issue was the lack of a crowd. Cameron wasn't particularly knowledgeable about electronic dance music, but had some intriguing ideas. He had tried asking around, but he couldn't track down the right person to discuss them. With his attention primarily occupied by Emily's kindergarten dilemma, he just hadn't had the time to explore his other interests. With the greetings exchanged, Cameron suggested, "Let's talk over dinner." Everyone settled down at the dining table, which was laden with a variety of dishes. Each dish was served on a heated plate to keep it warm, and as the covers were removed, a tantalizing aroma filled the room.
Wow, so much food! And my favorites, too! Thank you, Cameron!
Macy's eyes sparkled as she voiced her appreciation. "You're welcome. Eat as much as you like." Cameron responded with a laugh. He came across as a warm and approachable figure, much like the friendly uncle next door.
Hold on. We can't eat yet. We need to turn off the lights, light the candles, sing the birthday song, and make a wish.
Emily interjected. "All right, let's get the candles ready." Jessica agreed with a smile. Emily grabbed Macy's hand and led her to the side of the table, the other adults following suit. Ken quickly opened the cake box and inserted 5 candles.
Turn off the lights,
Emily announced once the candles were lit. Her own excitement was palpable. It was as if she was the one celebrating her birthday. Thomas made his way over to the lights and flipped a switch. The room immediately dimmed, but the numerous night pearls spread across the space emitted a gentle light, not enough to outshine the glow of the candle flame, but sufficient to add a dreamlike quality to the scene. Seeing the display of the night pearls, Ken was amazed. The idea of using a night pearl as a light bulb was fascinating. He shared a glance with Darcy, both aware of the pearl's immense value. Secretly, they were in awe of the ostentatious display of wealth by Cameron's family. However, they would have been even more impressed if they knew that 1,000 more night pearls were stashed away in New Moon Mountain. The birthday song, sung in Emily's sweet voice, echoed around the room. Her accurate pronunciation and tender vocals were a pleasure to everyone's ears. Macy, after making her wish, blew out the candles. "Happy birthday!" Everyone chorused, laughing. Macy was ecstatic.
Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, everyone.
She thanked everyone present, earning a warm chuckle from the crowd. After exchanging pleasantries, Thomas suggested they commence the meal, but Emily insisted on cutting the cake first. Ken obliged and cut a small piece for both the girls before they all returned to their seats. About 10 minutes into the meal, Darcy turned to Jessica and said, "I hear Emmy has started kindergarten."
"Yes, she did, but she didn't make it very far,"
Jessica replied, shaking her head.
"She came home after not even 10 minutes. Is it because she misses you?"
Darcy inquired with a chuckle.
"She'll get used to it."
The conversation then meandered toward their experiences with kindergartens. As the adults continued their discussion, the little girls finished their meal and went off to play with their toys. Ken excused himself to go to the bathroom and was followed by Darcy. When they returned, Ken told Cameron, "Look, if Emmy is finding it hard to adjust to kindergarten, perhaps Macy could go with her for a few days. A friend's company might make it easier." "That's a good idea," Cameron responded. "But wouldn't that be inconvenient for you? Macy has school too, doesn't she?" Ken shook his head, smiling. "Macy just started at Sunrise Kindergarten. It's not a formal school as such, so a delay of a few days in her education would be fine. Darcy can assist with the tutoring later. Plus, it'll be a good opportunity for Macy to experience the teaching methods at Waterstone Academy. We had planned to enroll her there 2 years ago, but she was a bit mischievous, and they weren't sure it would be a good fit for her. So they turned us down." Cameron had a thought. "What if I arranged for a spot for Macy at Waterstone Academy? I have a contact." Ken was stopped in his tracks. After all, attending Waterstone Academy meant the freedom to choose any elementary school upon graduation. In terms of personal development, it was undoubtedly the best choice. But enrolling in Waterstone Academy implied a significant financial commitment. Yet for the sake of Macy's future, Ken found himself torn. He glanced toward Darcy for support.
"Wouldn't that be a hassle?"
Darcy asked. There was a troubled expression on her face. Her concern was less about the money and more about the imposition on their friends. "It's no trouble at all," Cameron reassured them. Cameron, Jessica, and Ken appeared to be on the same wavelength. After a 2-minute discussion, the matter was settled. "I'll make a call," Cameron announced. He got up and went to the adjoining room. He located Theodore Mackey's number in his contacts and dialed it. The phone was answered on the 3rd ring, and Theodore's enthusiastic voice filled the air. "Good evening, Mr. Lee. I heard there was some emotional upheaval this morning. Is there a problem?" There was a note of concern in his warm tone, but Cameron's proposal soothed him, even causing him a flicker of elation. Well, there was a minor issue. My little girl was quite attached to me. Cameron grinned as he spoke. He was clearly delighted by Emily's clingy behavior. Emily has made a good friend who's the same age. I was hoping she could accompany Emily to kindergarten. Is that something you could help us arrange? Of course, no problem at all. Theodore's laugh echoed down the line. The whole purpose of our kindergarten is to educate children. We would be thrilled to welcome her. He paused and then added, just send over the child's and her parents' details. We'll get the paperwork started immediately so she can begin tomorrow. That's great, thank you, Mr. Mackey. Not at all, Mr. Lee. After a bit more lighthearted conversation, they hung up. Theodore's joy was palpable even over the phone. His small favor meant that Cameron owed him one in return, and with that in his pocket, Theodore has cemented his position at the head of the Mackey family. It was clear that Theodore would have done anything for Cameron, even if it didn't directly benefit the kindergarten. But for Cameron, when it came to Emily, everything else was secondary. Exiting the bedroom, he announced, just jot down Macy's details and your information and send them over. She can start tomorrow. He handed over his phone. Okay, but I feel a bit awkward about all this. Ken chuckled, accepting the phone. They were talking about direct contact with the founder and owner of Waterstone Academy. But Cameron had made one short phone call, and everything was settled. His influence was immense. Ken marveled at the situation as he sent over the details about himself, Macy, and Darcy. Not even a second after sending the details, a reply arrived from the other end confirming receipt. The efficiency of the whole operation left Ken feeling slightly bewildered. He never would have believed that something like that could have been achieved so quickly and with so little pushback. Emily, Macy, can you come over here, please? Jessica beckoned the two little girls with a friendly smile. There's something we'd like to talk to you about. Obediently, Emily hopped off the bed and scampered over, with Macy close on her heels. Jessica sat the girls down and looked at them seriously. Macy, I heard you've been attending kindergarten for a while now, Jessica said. Is it fun? Oh, yes, Macy exclaimed. It's full of kids, and the teachers organize games for us. And we get gold stars when we do well and learn things or play nicely. It's a big deal to get a gold star. Not everyone gets one. My daddy is always really pleased with me when I bring a gold star home, and the teacher takes us on field trips and picnics. There are all kinds of great things at kindergarten. As Macy continued to talk excitedly about her experiences, Emily's curiosity was piqued. Jessica looked at her and could tell that there was an internal struggle going on. What do you think, Emmy? She asked. Doesn't that sound fun? Wouldn't you like to go to kindergarten and play with the other kids and do all those fun activities? Emily thought for a moment. No, she said. I want to stay with Daddy. But Emmy, Macy said, trying to convince her friend. Kindergarten is so much fun. We can play all day there and still come back home at night. I want Daddy to come with me to kindergarten, Emily said as her voice quietened. But they won't let him in. Well, you only go to kindergarten 5 days a week and stay home on the weekends. And your mommy or daddy will pick you up every day after school, Macy offered helpfully. In the excitement, she had totally forgotten her own tear-filled first day at kindergarten. 5 days? Emily asked. She started counting on her fingers, which was the first sign that she might be considering the idea. It looked like there might be some hope after all. Jessica's eyes brightened, and she said, It's only from 8:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon. A total of 8 hours. It'll be over before you know it. Plus, if you can earn some gold stars, Daddy will be over the moon. But I don't want to be away from Daddy, Emily said sadly. Why would I leave you? Cameron asked. I'll always be there for you. I'll drop you off in the morning, pick you up in the afternoon, and even get your lunch ready. But Emily's lip quivered, and her eyes welled up with tears once more. Before she could finish, Jessica cut in. What if Macy goes to school with you? Emily looked at her mother in surprise. That had caught her attention. We can go to school together? Macy asked, ecstatic. That would be amazing! You're so clever! Emmy, you're sure to get lots of gold stars. She didn't know that she and Emily were supposed to be going to different schools, so she naturally assumed that Emily would join her own school rather than the other way around. Ken wasn't concerned about her leaving Sunrise Kindergarten. After all, the friends she was close to all lived in her community. They could hang out whenever they wanted.
School didn't necessarily have to be a part of it.
What's a gold star?
Emily asked, her pout returning.
It's a sticker that teachers give us for doing well.
Macy explained proudly.
Having a gold star means I've done something really good. I already have 22 of them.
Emmy, are you and Macy good friends? Darcy asked with a smile.
Yes,
Emily replied. Then you should go to school with her. You can play together during the day and go home with your daddy in the afternoon.
Emily, come with me.
Macy pleaded.
I promise it'll be lots of fun.
With everyone trying to persuade her, Emily finally seemed to be thinking about it seriously. She looked at Cameron, Jessica, Macy, and lastly at her own fingers before agreeing.
Okay,
she said hesitantly. The adults exchanged relieved smiles. It was a weight off all their minds. But Emily hadn't gone down without a fight. She was finally willing to agree, and when she was mentally prepared.
All right, you two can go play,
Darcy said, smiling.
Macy,
why don't you tell Emily more about what you do in kindergarten so she knows what to expect?
Okay, Mommy,
Macy said.
Let's go to the couch to play, Emmy. Let me tell you, there's so much to do in kindergarten.
Seeing the children engaged, the adults relaxed and started chatting amongst themselves. It was almost 10 o'clock when Ken and his family decided to leave. Thomas and Melissa also left at the same time. Once she was tucked up in bed, Jessica took some time to explain to Emily what kindergarten was all about. After a series of discussions, the little girl nodded, albeit reluctantly, to show that she was willing to give it a try. That night, Jessica allowed Emily to sleep next to Cameron. And after listening to a bedtime story, she cuddled up to him and soon fell asleep. Jessica smiled faintly, leaned on Cameron's other side, and eventually drifted off herself. The next morning at 8 o'clock, Ken left Macy and Darcy at the entrance to the restaurant and left for work. At the same time, Cameron and Jessica walked out with Emily, ready to take her to school. Jessica sat in the front seat while Darcy and the two little girls sat in the back.
Emily, we're not going to my old school. We're going to a new kindergarten together,
Macy exclaimed in excitement.
I'm going to a new place to play.
It was clear that Darcy and Ken had prepared her well the night before.
But I still want my daddy to stay with me,
Emily muttered.
They can't stay in the kindergarten. The day will be over soon, and they'll come to pick us up in the evening,
Macy explained. Emily just grunted. They soon arrived at Waterstone Academy. There were still many cars at the entrance, but Cameron found a place to park his. All right, we're here. Let's get out, Cameron said as he opened the car door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. He lifted Emily out of the car and helped her with her school bag. Such a big girl, he said proudly. Emily grunted again. Then she seemed to have a change of heart. After being silent for a couple of seconds, she said,
Daddy, I'm definitely going to get a gold star.
She looked up at Cameron, her big, bright eyes filled with determination.
I want you to be proud of me. I'm sure I can get one.
Emily's face instantly warmed Cameron's heart. Being cared for, being loved by his own daughter. It was a unique sensation for him. A feeling of pure happiness, gratification, and something more elusive swelled within him. He guessed that it was the love between a parent and child, brightening his world. I'll treasure every golden star you earn, he told her, and for each one that you present me with, I'll give you something back in return. Truth be told, he would have done anything for her, even without the promise of a gold star. But hearing his pledge, Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement. Meanwhile, Darcy and Macy were also getting out of the car. Not wanting to draw the attention of onlookers across the street, Jessica stayed in the vehicle. Seeing Cameron with Emily, Macy and Darcy stirred some discomfort inside her. She was worried it was going to be a repeat of the day before, but this time, there would be two little girls in tears. However, when Darcy and Cameron exchanged a few words before opening the car door and helping the girls out, her mood lightened somewhat. And so, Cameron led the two girls towards school, where a small crowd had gathered near the entrance. Spotting them from afar, Jenny walked over to greet them. Jenny greeted Cameron, and then she turned toward Emily with a bright smile.
It's good to see you again, Emily, she said. There are so many children here eager to meet you and play with you. And you must be Macy, right? Hello, teacher,
Macy replied politely.
Her name's Miss Tabor,
Emily interjected.
Hello, Miss Tabor,
Macy said, giggling. You have a great memory, Emily, Jenny responded warmly. Come on, we'll be starting class soon.
Daddy, promise you'll come pick me up quickly,
Emily pleaded with puppy dog eyes. I promise. I'll be here right on time, Cameron reassured her. With that,
Jenny guided the girls toward the throng of students. Emily couldn't tear her gaze away from her father, looking back repeatedly as they walked away. "Hold on a second," Cameron suddenly called out. Jenny paused, turning to address him. "Did you forget something, Mr. Lee?" "Yes," Cameron replied. He looked down at Emily and asked Jenny softly, "Do you have any gold stars here?" "Gold stars?" Jenny asked. "Do you mean as student rewards?" "That's right," Cameron confirmed. "We do," Jenny replied with a smile. "But the gold stars are just the basic rewards. As the kids earn more, their interest in them wanes. So we've got other rewards lined up. After collecting 15 gold stars, they can be traded in for small toy prizes. As they collect more, the rewards become bigger. By the 5th set of 15 gold stars, they can exchange them for a custom-made larger prize. We aim to keep our kids motivated to earn these rewards and hope that parents will join us in celebrating their achievements." "I'm relieved to hear that," Cameron said. "Jenny, please take good care of Emily. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to contact me." "Don't worry, Mr. Lee. We'll handle all the reward details and everything else," Jenny assured him with a warm smile. "All right then, I'll leave you to it." Cameron waved to Emily, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Emmy, I'll see you this afternoon."
"Hi, Daddy!"
Emily called back. With that, Cameron exited the kindergarten. As he glanced back, he noticed Emily and Macy hand in hand, following Jenny toward their classmates. He saw the mix of curiosity and apprehension on Emily's face. But Macy, on the other hand, seemed quite at ease. She was an old hand at navigating the world of kindergarten. Seeing the look on Emily's face as she walked with her friend, Cameron sighed in relief. At least she wasn't in tears. But his relief was short-lived. He sighed again, realizing his own dilemma. He would miss Emily terribly during the day. And with Jessica returning to work in a couple of days, he would be all alone. Maybe I could work here as a custodian, he thought. If anyone from the martial world had caught wind of his thought, they would have been stunned. The idea of an established warrior like him working in a kindergarten was strange, to say the least. However, it seemed to be working for Morgan. The kindergarten was becoming increasingly enticing, even in his wildest dreams. Theodore wouldn't have thought it would attract so much attention from someone like Cameron. With a shake of his head, Cameron dismissed the thought and returned to his car. Once he was inside, Jessica immediately inquired, "So, how did it go? Did Emily cry?" Her tone betrayed her anxiety. Though Emily seemed to have accepted school, Jessica feared the little girl might have fallen apart again. "She didn't cry this time," Cameron replied, gently rubbing Jessica's neck. "She was very good. I promised her that I'd be there to pick her up in the afternoon." Jessica exhaled in relief and placed one hand on her chest. "All right then, let's pick her up half an hour early today." She then turned to Darcy with a grateful smile. "Thank you so much. Without Macy, Emily wouldn't have adapted so quickly." "Absolutely," Cameron agreed. "Macy really was a big help." Darcy blushed. "Honestly, we're just grateful that Macy got to go to Waterstone Academy. It's all thanks to you guys helping us out." "Let's agree we helped each other out then," Cameron said kindly. "Where do you live? I'll drop you off." "No need. We can just head back to the restaurant," Darcy said, waving away the offer. "I'll grab a cab later. Our place isn't far from yours." "It's fine. We don't have anything better to do today. We can drop you off," Jessica insisted. "Your place is on the east side of town, right? We'll be there in no time." "Okay then," Darcy conceded. She gave Cameron the address, and the three of them set off across New Moon Bay. Meanwhile, back in the kindergarten, Jenny clapped to gather the children's attention. Seeing all their eyes on her, she led the way toward the school building. Macy took Emily's hand, and the two girls walked along together. Another little girl, walking just behind them, let out a disgruntled huff. She preferred being in the front and felt like they had pushed in front of her. Jenny led the group. In the middle, there was a ponytailed woman in her 30s, and bringing up the rear was a tall blonde woman. They were Jenny's teaching assistants. Jenny was in charge of the class, but the teaching assistants were with her most of the time, helping out with the myriad of tasks that needed to be performed each day. Having three of them meant that they were able to take proper breaks, but still ensure that all-important teacher-to-student ratio was maintained. "Here we are," Jenny said as they reached the classroom. They walked in and Jenny stood near the small lectern with Emily and Macy at her side. The rest of the children rushed to their seats, buzzing with energy. But there was one empty seat in the middle. Jenny said with a warm smile, "We have 2 new students today. How about we let our new friends introduce themselves first?" The children murmured among themselves. At that moment, Jenny bent down to speak to Emily.
Emily, take a few steps forward and tell us your name, what you like doing, and what you're good at, she said softly. For instance, hello, my name is Miss Tabor. I love playing with children and I'm really good at playing the piano. Something like that. Despite Jenny's thorough explanation, Emily seemed perplexed. She stepped forward, her large backpack swaying, and blinked uncertainly. Facing the many children in front of her, she was incredibly nervous. It was the first time she had ever been in a situation like that before. The room fell quiet. Everyone was waiting expectantly to find out what Emily had to say. Overwhelmed by nerves, she looked helplessly at Jenny and Macy. Understanding Emily's anxiety, Jenny decided to let Macy go first. It would be easier for Emily to follow someone else's lead. And if Macy couldn't handle it either, she would have one of the other kids go first. Just as she was about to suggest it, Macy hopped over to Emily's side.
I'll go first,
she exclaimed eagerly. Macy adopted a been there, done that attitude and began to speak loudly and clear.
My name is Macy. I used to go to Sunrise Kindergarten, but now I'm coming here with my friend so that she's not scared. I have lots of hobbies, but I especially like eating delicious food and drawing. My daddy always says that he loves my drawings.
Welcome, Macy. Jenny initiated the applause and the children quickly joined in. Hearing the applause and seeing several children and the 3 adults in the room smiling encouragingly, Emily was curious. She was still nervous, but the introduction and enthusiastic applause that Macy had received made her want to experience it for herself. Jenny nodded at Emily and said, You can have a go now if you like. She was interested to see what the little girl had to say. Mr. Mackey had called her personally and asked her to take good care of Emily. Now, here was Macy, also saying that she was specifically there to accompany Emily and take care of her. Mr. Lee, Emily's father, was obviously a man of great power and influence. He had even managed to bend the school's rules so that Emily could join with her friend. However, Jenny wasn't fazed by background or influence. She paid special attention to every child under her care. If anyone was worth talking about, it was her own grandfather, a remarkable man whose fame she never flaunted. Only the school security knew that the old custodian was a martial arts master.
My name is Emily. My hobby is watching cartoons with Daddy. I'm good at singing and playing games.
Emily stumbled nervously through her introduction and then looked at Jenny.
Very good, Emily,
Jenny encouraged, leading the applause.
Welcome.
Everyone clapped. The applause made Emily's eyes light up with happiness. All right, now let's welcome our 2 new friends. Everyone from Lydia to Armand. Please move to the right, Jenny directed. Lydia was the girl who sat to the right of the empty seat in the middle. She was also the short-haired girl who had walked behind Macy and Emily as they had come inside. As soon as Jenny gave the order, Armand moved to the right. Lydia, however, wasn't happy.
Why do I have to move?
She asked.
I like sitting here.
Jenny sighed softly. We've got a couple of new students today, so we need to make them feel welcome. We're short 1 seat, so we need to shift everyone 1 spot to the right. After a pause, Jenny added, Also, from now on, we'll change seats every other week. Lydia, could you consider this an early switch?
Okay,
Lydia responded, albeit grudgingly. She grabbed her backpack and moved to the right of Jenny. Emily, Macy, come on over and take a seat. You can put your bags under the table, Jenny said with a smile. With Emily's small hand in hers, the 2 girls walked to their places. Macy took the spot to Emily's right, and Emily sat to Lydia's right. Noticing Lydia's appraising gaze, Emily instinctively said,
Hello.
Lydia harumphed and turned away. For a moment, Emily was disappointed, but she didn't understand why Lydia didn't like her.
Let's just ignore her,
Macy said confidently.
We don't need to play with her.
But Emily's disappointment remained, despite what Macy had said. Jenny clapped her hands again to get the children's attention. We've got 2 new faces today, but I realized that none of us know each other well yet. Let's all introduce ourselves, just like the new kids did, starting with Damon. She gestured to a boy on her left. The charming blue-eyed boy was one of the first students Jenny had internalized. Damon, appearing poised and formal like a well-mannered little prince, stood up to speak. My name is Damon. My hobbies are listening to music and playing soccer. After finishing, Damon gave a nod of approval and returned to his seat with a somewhat aloof demeanor. Jenny started clapping. The rest of the class joined in. Emily, her wide eyes scanning the room, extended her small hands and began to clap. All the clapping seemed very strange to her. 7 or 8 more introductions followed, and Emily found that she was struggling to remember everybody's names. All right, We've heard from Emily and Macy. Now, it's Lydia's turn, Jenny announced, smiling broadly.
My name is Lydia. I enjoy swimming and dancing. I'm particularly good at dancing, especially the peacock dance.
Following her introduction, the classroom erupted in applause. Emily, too, joined in the clapping. Seeing Emily applauding her so enthusiastically, Lydia seemed less bothered about losing her original seat. However, she still didn't make eye contact, which left Emily feeling a little sad. Finally, it was the turn of the last child, a cheerful Egyptian boy named Armand. He got up from his seat, smiling brightly, holding a small notebook in his hands. He seemed well prepared. He began to introduce himself. My name is Armand, and I'm from Egypt, he explained. I love watching TV, hanging out with friends, and I'm good at telling jokes. I'll share one with you all right now. Armand, the stage is yours, Jenny encouraged, smiling and gesturing at Armand. Armand ambled over to Jenny from his spot. Jenny pulled out her phone and fired up the camera, planning to send the recording to Armand's dad later. Armand looked around the room a couple of times before finally landing on Emily. So, here's the thing, he said. I know that Emily is new, but there's already a rumor going around that I like her. I just want to say that it's not just a rumor. It's absolutely true. He grinned and gave Emily a little wave. Emily suddenly felt both embarrassed and thrilled.
A classmate likes me,
she thought happily.
Maybe we can play together.
The kids didn't find Armand's words particularly funny, but they clapped anyway out of politeness. Jenny was at a loss for words. She wasn't sure she should be praising him for his ability to charm the ladies, but she also knew that she had to maintain a positive attitude and not shame him for sharing his feelings. In the end, she settled on, Thank you, Armand. Very impressive. Now, take your seat. As for the video, Jenny decisively chose not to send it to Armand's parents. However, she knew it was often a case of like father, like son. His dad would probably be quite proud. Macy, sitting next to Emily, glared at the little boy.
You can't like Emily, and Emily won't allow it,
she hissed at him.
I'm watching you, and you're not even allowed to hug her, let alone kiss her.
Though Macy had been in kindergarten for a year, she was still innocent and naive. Armand scratched his head uncertainly. Emily, too, was feeling well and truly out of her depth. She mumbled softly,
You can't kiss me.
Jenny laughed, and then she added, Macy's right. Boys and girls should not be hugging or kissing each other. But it's okay to like each other. Liking someone means, well, friends who like each other can play games together and share meals, things like that. Emily's eyes sparkled. Looking at Jenny, she summoned the courage to ask, Can we really? Absolutely, Jenny replied. We want you to have a lovely time here with your friends. Emily beamed. On her first day of kindergarten, someone already liked her. Now that we've all introduced ourselves, how about we play a little game? Jenny suggested with a grin. Many of the children replied enthusiastically. This game is called the Hermit's Handkerchief. As she spoke, Jenny produced a handkerchief with a rose pattern from her bag and explained. The handkerchief starts with the first child and is passed around one by one. When I say stop, whoever is holding the handkerchief will have to share something they know. Also, no one is allowed to pass it too quickly or too slowly. After laying down the rules, Jenny handed the handkerchief to the first child on her left, which happened to be Damon. Damon, with his calm demeanor, seemed ready to take on the challenge. I'm going to turn around and count down very slowly from 3, said Jenny. You will start passing the handkerchief around as soon as I tell you to. Whoever has it when I stop counting will perform for us. She turned around and fell silent. Emily stared intently at her. Never having played the game before, she was both nervous and excited. With all eyes on her, Jenny shouted, Begin! Damon glanced at her, and then he quickly handed the handkerchief to the student who was next to him. Jenny started counting, and the children passed the handkerchief as quickly as they could. 3, 2, 1, stop! She smiled at the girl who was holding the handkerchief. Phoebe, what are you going to perform for us? Phoebe looked nervous. Can I recite a poem? She asked timidly. Of course, we would love to hear your poem. Phoebe's eyes widened.
In the evening, I look up in the sky. The sun goes away, and I say goodbye.
Excellent! That was a wonderful poem. Let's see who's next. She turned around, and the children once again started passing the handkerchief. One by one, they all got a turn.
Emily sighed every time the handkerchief passed her by, but it finally stopped in front of her on the 7th round. Jenny smiled at her. It's your turn, Emily. What are you going to perform for us? Emily thought for a moment.
I'm going to sing a song.
That sounds wonderful. What song are you going to sing for us?
It's the theme song from my favorite show.
Jenny took out her phone to record the song. Emily had been excited to finally have a turn to perform, but she froze when she saw the phone. Are you ready, Emily? Emily blinked and gazed at her teacher.
Yes, I'm ready.
With that, she started singing. She still felt nervous, but her voice was clear and never wavered. Jenny and the teaching assistant stared at each other in shock. They hadn't expected Emily to be such a good singer. Jenny remembered who Emily's mother was, though. No wonder she's so talented, she thought. It made sense for children to pick up some of their parents' talents, even at such a young age. Emily sang with all her heart. When she was done, she fell silent and looked around nervously at her teacher and classmates, hoping that she had impressed them. Jenny exchanged glances with the teaching assistants, and then all three of them burst into applause.
Excellent, Emily! You have a very nice voice.
The students joined in the applause. Emily beamed at them. While Emily was distracted by her classmates' praise, Jenny sent Cameron the video she had recorded. She knew that he was worried about Emily. She got a reply almost immediately. She looks very happy. Thank you for the video. We feel better now. Jenny smiled. She was glad that Cameron sounded calm. She sent a smiling emoji, and then she looked at her students. Who wants another game? She asked with a smile. She didn't realize the response had come from Jessica, not Cameron. Jessica was stretched out on the couch in the dining room of Emmy's cafe. She was dressed casually and sipping a glass of juice. She had returned to the restaurant just in time to see Mickey heading out to the airport to pick up Eric and his wife. As soon as Mickey had left, Cameron had locked the door and grinned at her. Shall we head upstairs? She had taken his hand and led him into the bedroom. She reached for her glass again, but before she could pick it up, her phone beeped. She saw the video and called Cameron over. It's Emmy! Come and watch it with me. He sat next to her and wrapped his arms around her, and together they watched Emily singing. She looked nervous at first, but she was singing one of her favorite songs, so she quickly calmed down. Jessica smiled. Look at her. She looks really happy. She sent a quick reply to Jenny and set her phone down. A few strands of hair fell into her eyes, and she brushed them away. She pinched Cameron playfully. My hair is a mess now because of you. My makeup is probably a mess too. I'll have to redo it. You don't need makeup to be beautiful. And if you do redo it, I might just mess it up again. She rolled her eyes at him. You're so romantic. They spent a few minutes curled up in each other's arms, and then Jessica reached for her phone again. She started scrolling through Cameron's social media account. You've got tens of millions of followers already. It looks like you're a lot more popular than I am. Have you checked yours recently? Cameron asked casually. You've been getting more followers too. Maybe it's hard to see the total number because the new followers pop up in different places on your page. You're popular too. Jessica smiled broadly. You're the best. You sound like Emmy now. My daddy's the best. Jessica cried, making her best impression of her daughter. And I'm the strongest too. Don't forget that. Jessica snorted as Cameron stood up. Speaking of Emmy, I need to make her lunch. I'll send it over as soon as I'm done, he said. Okay, while you're doing that, I'll fix my makeup. Jessica got up, kissed Cameron lightly on the cheek, and went upstairs. Cameron headed into the kitchen and started grabbing ingredients. A few minutes later, 2 cars pulled up outside. Mickey, Eric, Amelia, and Donald got out and walked into the restaurant. Eric was carrying 2 large bags, which he set down on one of the tables. He saw Cameron in the kitchen and waved at him. I'm back! Cameron came into the dining room. Eric smiled at him and pointed at the bags. Those are for Emily. One is full of snacks and the other is full of toys. Cameron smiled. Thank you. Eric glanced around. He had thought that Emily would approach him as soon as he had mentioned snacks and toys, but he didn't see her. Where is she? He asked curiously. She's in school. Kindergarten, Mickey added. Eric smiled. All right. I guess she's old enough now. Anyway, Cameron, thank you for having faith in me. I'll do my best to help the company. Don't mention it. I'm not worried about it at all. Amelia smiled shyly at him. She knew she would never forget what he had done for her family. He had cured Eric, Without his help, her family would have been devastated. Thank you. Eric squeezed her hand. He knew what she was thinking. Before they returned, the two of them had agreed that they would do whatever they could to repay Cameron. Mickey patted Eric on the back. Why don't you have a seat? Huh? Oh, of course. Eric, Amelia, and Donald took their usual seats at their usual table. Cameron went back into the kitchen, followed by Mickey. Cameron turned to Mickey and waited for him to speak. Mickey cleared his throat. The restaurant's not open yet. The entertainment company has been set up, and there's going to be a ribbon-cutting ceremony tomorrow to open both of them. Do you and Jessica want to go? Olaf is hosting it. There will be a lot of people there. Mickey was glad that Olaf had returned and started overseeing the running of the restaurant and company. It gave him time to work on his cultivation. Cameron thought for a moment. We'll stop by to see how everything is going. We won't stay for the whole thing, though. All right. Mickey went back to his usual seat, took out his phone and called Janet. When can you get here? He asked as soon as she answered the call. Cameron's making lunch. I love hearing those words. I'll be right there. He ended the call and glanced into the kitchen. Cameron was hard at work, standing over 2 frying pans and tossing vegetables into them. A few minutes later, when Cameron was done cooking, the ring on his finger lit up. 2 lunch boxes appeared. He packed up 2 identical servings of food and set them inside the boxes. And then he added 2 bottles of water. The lunch boxes had enough straps and buckles to hold everything securely. When the food was secure, he put silverware and napkins in the box's side pockets. He grabbed a pen and wrote Emily's and Macy's names on the tops of the lunch boxes. He had decided that since Macy and Emily were going to the same school, he might as well make lunch for Macy too. He hadn't mentioned his decision to Ken, but it had been an easy decision to make, especially since he knew that Emily would share her lunch with her friends anyway. He carefully closed the lunch boxes and quickly washed the dishes that he had used. Then, he went upstairs. Are you ready? He asked. Jessica nodded, and the two of them left the restaurant. Cameron knew that the food would still be hot and fresh when they arrived at the Waterstone Academy. The lunch boxes were made of level 1 geothermal stones, which kept them warm. Cameron took Emily's lunch very seriously. Bringing her warm, fresh food was a way for him to show his love. Just before noon, he and Jessica arrived at Emily's school. Jessica reached for her phone to call Darcy, but then she saw Darcy walking toward the school's entrance. She was carrying a lunchbox. Jessica got out of the car. Darcy! Darcy turned, and Jessica ran toward her. Cameron followed her, carrying the lunchboxes that he had prepared. Jessica caught up with her. Darcy, we've brought lunch for Macy. We didn't mention it because we didn't want to embarrass you. Cameron's happy to make lunch for her. Is it okay with you if he keeps doing it in the future? Darcy froze in shock and looked at the lunchboxes that Cameron was holding. She remained silent for a few seconds, but then she started laughing. Of course, thank you. I don't know what else to say at this point. Cameron smiled at her. It's really no problem. Let's bring them their food. He headed to the main entrance, but stopped when he saw several teachers standing outside the door. Each had a large cart, and several parents were placing lunchboxes and bags in them. Cameron approached one of the teachers and reluctantly put the lunchboxes into his cart. Jessica joined him. Can't we go in and deliver them ourselves? She asked sadly. She already knew the answer though, and it made her heart ache. She desperately wanted to see her daughter. In the past, she had gone several days without seeing her and had only needed a phone call to feel reassured. But her imagination had been running wild since Emily had left that morning. She thought she knew why. Cameron had been taking care of Emily, and she was worried he would spoil her. She knew that he had given her more snacks than she needed. The teacher smiled at her but shook his head. I'm sorry, but we can't let parents in. The children would be too distracted if we did. Jessica sighed. All right, well, just make sure that Emily and Macy get their lunches. Of course. Cameron, Jessica, and Darcy turned and walked away. At noon, the students filed into the cafeteria. The students who had brought their own lunches joined the teachers and sat around the large round tables, and the rest of the students lined up to get a school lunch. Jenny found Emily and Macy. Your lunches are here. The boxes are so pretty. The girl sat down with her. Macy smiled. Emmy's daddy made our lunches. He's the best cut. Emily nodded, but she looked confused. Daddy is the best. But how do we open the boxes? She poked her lunchbox, but nothing happened. Jenny laughed. I'll show you. She unfastened 2 buckles, and the lid popped open. Macy imitated her actions, and the lid on her box popped open too. A fragrant aroma wafted from the boxes. Jenny inhaled deeply. She hadn't expected any of the students' parents to go to so much effort. As she breathed in the scent, she realized how hungry she was. Macy looked delighted.
Ribs and chicken wings! And vegetables too! This looks delicious!
Emily looked into her own lunchbox. Her lunch was exactly the same as Macy's. The girls took their lunches out and set them on the table. One of the students who had gotten a school lunch sat down on Macy's right. He frowned and looked at Jenny.
Why does her lunch smell so good?
Well, it's because… Macy cut her off.
It's because it came from Emmy's restaurant. She has her own restaurant that's named after her. The food's really good.
One of the other teachers started laughing. Is that so? It must be an excellent restaurant. Emily nodded enthusiastically.
It is,
Macy said.
It's called Emmy's Cafe.
The teacher's eyes widened in shock. He turned to Emily. That's your restaurant? You're that Emmy?
Yeah.
Emily sounded proud. Jenny was surprised too. I know it. I ate there once. She gazed wistfully at the girls' lunches, remembering how delicious the restaurant's egg fried rice was. As much as she had enjoyed her meal, she had found herself envying the members' food. Emily noticed the teacher's expressions and seemed to know what they were thinking.
Do you want some of our food? We can share it with you.
Both teachers started laughing. Jenny shook her head. Thank you, Emily. That's very kind of you, but we have our own lunches. Emily shrugged.
Okay.
She and Macy smiled at each other, and then they turned their attention to their food. It was delicious, and they were happy that the other students envied them. The teachers exchanged glances and sighed quietly. They would have loved to taste the girls' lunches. Jenny noticed how quickly the children were eating. She stood up and clapped her hands to get their attention. Slow down. You'll get indigestion if you eat too quickly. Several minutes later, when they were done eating, she stood up again. It's nap time now. If you're not sleepy yet, you can play for a few minutes, but you all need to lie down for your nap soon. Now find your teachers and line up with them. The teachers led their students to their nap room. Emily went in and was surprised to see that the beds all had toys on them.
So many toys, but they've all been separated. They're not all together,
she muttered. Macy laughed.
Everyone gets toys. We have toys on our beds too.
They looked for their beds and discovered that they would be napping right next to each other. Their beds, as Macy had pointed out, also had toys on them. Emily's had 2 stuffed animals, a rabbit and a puppy, and Macy's had a teddy bear almost as big as she was. She smiled when she saw it. She liked having things that she could hug while she slept. Emily's eyes lit up.
Look at my animals!
Just as she was about to jump onto her bed, a boy approached her. It was Armand, and he was carrying a stuffed elephant. Hi, Emily. Can we be friends?
I can give you my elephant.
He sounded shy, and Emily saw a worried look in his eyes. She laughed.
Hi, Armand. We can be friends, and you don't even have to give me your elephant.
He looked relieved and surprised.
You remember my name?
She nodded.
And I know that your family is from Egypt.
Yeah, I only came to San Diego last year.
But you're here now.
Emily stated matter-of-factly. Armand frowned.
I don't think I fit in. Of course you do.
Jenny, who had come to check on them, smiled when she heard what they were talking about. She knelt down next to Armand. Emily's right. You do fit in. Everyone belongs here and everyone is welcome. Her tone was gentle. Armand looked up at her and smiled shyly. Jenny glanced at Emily and Macy. It looks like you two aren't sleepy yet. Why don't you play with Armand for a little while? You can take your naps later. I need to go and check on your classmates now. With that, she turned and walked away. Armand looked happy. He reached out, grabbed Emily's hand, and started pulling her away from her bed.
Let's go and play.
Macy was stunned. She pulled Armand away from Emily.
No, you can't do that. You can't just grab her hand like that.
Her defense of Emily would have made Cameron proud, but it left Armand feeling ashamed. He dropped Emily's hand.
I'm sorry. Will you still play with me?
He asked softly. Emily and Macy exchanged glances, and then they both looked at him and nodded. Emily went back to her bed.
Let's play with my stuffed animals.
Damon wandered over and joined them.
That's a cute puppy, Emily. I know. It's small, though. My daddy and I have a dog. Daddy takes really good care of him. He sounds like a cool dad. He's the best. He created a paradise just for me. A what? A paradise. It's a really special place. Oh, that sounds nice.
Emily thought about New Moon Mountain and smiled.
It is. It's got grass and trees, and there are really pretty flowers. And Clifford and Ink are there too. Ink's our dog. There are other dogs too, and geese and ducklings.
Damon's eyes widened.
I want to see your paradise.
His voice trailed off, and he looked embarrassed. He was shy and came from a strict family, so he rarely spoke up. He was hoping to make friends with his classmates though, so he knew he had to try speaking. Armand nodded.
Me too. Does your stuffed puppy look like Ink?
Emily shook her head.
Ink is much bigger.
Is Clifford a dog too?
No, he's a chimpanzee.
Cool! Macy started laughing.
He is cool. He can throw things really far. He and Ink are both really cute.
Damon and Armand glanced at Emily, both of them hoping to be invited to her paradise. Emily thought for a moment.
If you want to come and play with me on our mountain, I'll have to ask my parents. For now, we can all play together here.
A soft voice caught her attention.
I want to play with you too.
Emily turned around and saw Phoebe standing behind her. She was looking at the floor and shuffling her feet awkwardly. She was too shy. She was worried that Emily would say no. Emily was delighted. It was only her first day of kindergarten, but she had already made a few friends.
Okay, let's play.
Phoebe looked up and smiled. Several minutes later, Jenny returned. It's nap time now. The children all climbed onto Emily's bed. Jenny helped them down, and they went back to their own beds. Emily lay down and pulled the sheets over her.
I can't sleep without Daddy,
she muttered, frowning. She stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine him sitting with her and telling her a story. Her classmates all drifted off to sleep one by one. Finally, as if their sleepiness were contagious, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. Flora and Zoe dropped by Emmy's cafe on their way to the company. Cameron and Jessica had just returned from Emily's school and were eating lunch. Just a few hours later, they had been worried about Emily, but the video that Jenny had sent them reassured them. They had seen the confidence in their daughter's eyes, and they knew that being in school would give her opportunities and experiences that they couldn't give her. Flora sat down next to Jessica with a huge smile on her face. I promise that you'll be shocked when you see what the place looks like. The furnishings and equipment are top-notch, and our office looks like a palace. There's even a bed if you need to lie down for a little while. Jessica was still thinking about Emily. Huh? What are you talking about? The company. We're taking you there to have a look at it. Oh, right. Of course. They all got up and left the restaurant. Flora and Zoe took their own cars. Cameron grabbed the key to his compact car. A few minutes later, after they had all parked and were heading toward the door, Zoe turned to Cameron and smirked. You have so many sports cars to choose from. Why do you drive that little thing? She asked, pointing to his car. He shrugged. He had liked sports cars in the past, but he no longer cared what he was driving. He could make any car go fast if he wanted to. It's fine. It got me here. Zoe rolled her eyes. Right, well, let's go in. Jessica reached for Cameron's hand, and they walked inside together, followed by Flora and Zoe. The lobby was large and clean. Several employees were hurrying around. One of them saw Cameron and headed over to greet him. Cameron squeezed Jessica's hand. That's the lobby manager that Olaf hired. The manager extended his hand to both of them. Welcome! Olaf is meeting with Thomas right now. He's up on the 10th floor. Should I tell him that you're here? Cameron shook his head. Thanks, but there's no need for that. You can go ahead and get back to whatever you were doing. We'll head upstairs. The manager nodded and walked away, and Cameron called an elevator. Let's have a look around, he suggested as he pushed the button for the 11th floor. When the doors opened, they stepped into a long hallway lined with doors. There were people everywhere. The offices are already busy. Let's see what the 12th floor looks like. They all got back into the elevator. The recording studio was on the 12th floor. All of its equipment was new, as were most of its employees. The group spent a few minutes checking out the equipment, and then Cameron turned to Jessica. Shall we keep going? She smiled and nodded. Let's see what's on the 13th floor. As soon as they stepped out of the elevator on the 13th floor, they heard Steve's voice. They looked to their left and saw him standing with his hands on his hips. Come on, get back to work. Hurry up and get your desk cleaned up. We still have a lot to do. If we get through it all quickly enough, you can all go home early today. A few people cheered and thanked him. They were looking forward to having some free time that night.
Steve's behavior made Jessica laugh. He turned around to see who was laughing. "Jessica, you're here?" She waved at him, and he ran over to her. "There's still a lot to do here. The official opening is tomorrow. I don't suppose we could have some food sent over tonight. What would you like?" Cameron asked. We would like." Steve's voice trailed off. He was stumped. Everything that Cameron cooked was delicious, so he couldn't make up his mind. He shrugged. "Anything is fine, really." Cameron smiled and turned to Jessica. "Let's head down to the 10th floor, see how your dad is doing." "Okay. He must be really busy since he hasn't been to the restaurant all day." The little group got back into the elevator. They got out on the 10th floor and found Thomas, Melissa, Olaf, and Teresa in a conference room. Teresa was showing Thomas a document while Olaf and Melissa were chatting and drinking tea. Olaf looked up when Cameron walked in. "Welcome!" Cameron smiled and sat down. Jessica approached her father. "Dad, what are you doing?" He pointed at the document and laughed. "I'm looking at potential projects. Olaf has given me so many to choose from that my head spins when I think about them." Olaf grinned. "I just want you to have as much information as possible so that you can make an informed decision. There really are a lot of great options. After the opening ceremony, we can go and have a look at some of them." Jessica was shocked. "Huh? But, Dad, didn't you say that you wanted to relax for a while? Are you really going to take off after the ceremony?" She stared at him in confusion. She had planned on spending a few days with him and her mother. Thomas scowled. "I came here to see my granddaughter, but you've sent her off to school. I don't even know why I'm still here." "What? Dad, you said—" Melissa cut her off. "Your father made a few phone calls before we came out here. He's got some things to take care of back home, so we're only going to spend a few more days here." Jessica sighed. "Can't you stay a little longer? What's the rush?" Thomas shook his head. "We can't stay. I'm in charge of the family now, so there are things that I have to do. I also have to work with the Chamber of Commerce. It's important. I'm a busy man." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Fine." She joined Cameron on the couch and chatted with Olaf and her mother for a few minutes. There was a soft knock on the door. Eric walked in, carrying a black notebook and a pen. He approached Olaf and cleared his throat. "I've read through everything a few times. I think I'm more or less ready for the opening ceremony." Olaf knew how busy the company would be after it opened. The most powerful families in the business community would all want to get as close to Cameron as possible, and they would pay to strengthen their ties to him. He grinned at Eric. "I'm afraid you'll be swamped with potential contracts and meeting requests after the ceremony. I'm sure that you'll be able to handle them." Olaf had some shares in the company and naturally wanted it to succeed. He would help if needed, but he didn't want to get involved in its management. Eric nodded and turned to Jessica. "When do you want to get started? Have you given any thought of what types of contracts you might want? I'll start screening them as soon as I get them." She thought for a moment. The Atlas Awards were about to begin. She knew that she could accept a role in a movie or television show if it had a tight shooting schedule. But she wanted to be with Cameron and Emily. She wanted to make sure that Emily was happy at her school. She still had her own aspirations and goals, but she was in no hurry. "For now, I would like to stay in San Diego, so I won't take on any work that would require traveling." "All right." Eric opened his notebook and wrote a few notes. Olaf smirked. Eric's vigilance amused him. Jessica's comment about not wanting to travel seemed like the sort of thing that would be easy to remember. Eric was taking his job very seriously. He'll loosen up eventually. Olaf thought. He had to admit to himself that Eric's diligence was good. He was showing a side of himself that made up for his shortcomings. Eric excused himself. Everyone except Olaf went back to chatting. Olaf gazed out the window and thought about how the company had grown. Just a few weeks earlier, it had been minimally staffed, but several people had been hired since then. He glanced across the room at Cameron, who had become remarkably powerful in a very short time. He had only been in San Diego for a few months, and he already had divine treasures. Having divine treasures was as good as having a sect. Cameron and Jessica stayed and chatted for a while longer. Jessica checked the time. "Let's go get Emmy," she whispered to Cameron. He nodded and they left the building together. They headed to the Waterstone Academy. The school had just ended for the day, and the road leading up to the main entrance was packed. Cars were parked along both sides. Parents got out of their cars and started walking toward the entrance. Cameron parked a block away. "Looks like this is as close as we can get. Do you want to wait here while I get her?" Jessica shook her head. "I want to go in too. Just give me a few seconds." He laughed softly. as she put on a hat and pulled its brim down to hide her face. You planned ahead.
I did. I've actually given it a bit of thought. As long as I'm free when school gets out, I would like to come with you. I don't care if people recognize me. If Emmy brings any friends home, then they'll find out who her mother is. They got out of the car and started walking. Cameron took her hand.
That sounds good. You can do whatever you want. And if you want to come with me to pick her up from school, then that's what we'll do. We don't need to worry about anybody else.
I do want to come with you, but I'm still a little worried. I do care about public opinion. It matters, and it could affect Emmy. Part of me wants to protect her from it, but part of me wants to just step back and let nature take its course. We can't shield her from everything, and we have to let her grow up. I'm sure
that's true.
She squeezed his hand. I wasn't finished. I was also going to say that I'm sure she'll turn out fine since she's got you as her father. Cameron laughed, but then his expression turned serious.
I'm responsible for protecting her. And you too. I'll destroy anything that might hurt our family. I'm just getting started in this world. But I know that I've already got the skills to protect you. My only concern is that things might get a bit chaotic when the gate to the pocket dimension opens. I need to make sure that I'm ready.
Please be careful. He smiled at her.
Of course. Just then, they heard Ken calling out to them.
Cameron! Jessica! You're here!
Jessica waved at him. He and Darcy met them on the sidewalk.
Can we go inside, or should we just wait for the kids to come out?
Jessica asked. Darcy smiled at her.
We'll go in, but not just yet. We'll go through the main door and meet them on the other side. Do you have the card? You'll need to swipe it when you get to the door.
Cameron reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. Got it. Jessica noticed a long line forming outside the door.
Are the parents lining up to get their children?
Darcy nodded and checked the time.
15 more minutes. Let's get in line.
The four of them walked to the end of the line. 15 minutes later, the line started moving. Cameron and Jessica swiped their card and walked through the door. The teachers were standing with their students, who were staring eagerly at the parents filing through the door. Emily's eyes lit up when she saw her parents.
Mommy, Daddy!
She ran over to them. Here she comes, Cameron said, catching her and lifting her up into the air. He kissed her on the cheek and set her down on her feet. Then Jessica leaned over and kissed her.
Daddy, did you miss me?
Of course I did. I couldn't wait to come here and pick you up. I told you that we would be here on time. And here we are. Armand approached them.
Are these your parents, Emily?
He whispered. She nodded.
They're so cool. I know they are. My daddy is handsome and my mommy is beautiful. Can I meet them? Of course. Mommy, Daddy, this is Armand. He's from a different country.
Jessica smiled at him.
Hi, Armand. It's nice to meet you. Where are you from?
Egypt.
How wonderful.
Armand looked embarrassed. He turned and ran away. Cameron reached for Emily's hand. Are you ready to go home?
Yes, let's go home.
She waved goodbye to Macy. When they got back to Cameron's car, Jessica got into the back seat with Emily.
Did you have fun today?
She asked. Emily nodded enthusiastically.
Tell me about your day. I made a lot of new friends. I played with Damon, Phoebe, and Armand. And Miss Tabor said that I was a good singer.
Cameron glanced into the rearview mirror and smiled. Really? It sounds like you had a great day. Emily giggled.
I did. But I still like being with you, Daddy. I still want to see you and Mommy after school.
I'm glad to hear that, Cameron said lightly as he drove to New Moon Bay.
What else did you do today? What games did you play? Jessica asked.
We introduced ourselves and then we played a game with a handkerchief. We passed it around and whoever was holding it at the end had to perform. That was when I sang. I was nervous at first, but I think I did okay.
I'm sure that you did.
Emily looked delighted.
My teacher told me that I had a good voice. And later, when it was nap time, Macy and I weren't tired right away. So we stayed up. That's when we met our new friends.
Jessica's eyes opened wide. She leaned over and hugged her daughter.
Emmy, I'm so proud of you. You did so much on your first day. You deserve a reward. I'll ask Daddy to give you some ice cream tonight.
Ice cream! I love ice cream!
Emily started clapping. Her mother's praise made her happy, and she decided that she liked kindergarten. She could make new friends, sing and play, and if she told her parents about her day, they would be so happy that they would give her treats. Cameron laughed. Okay, Emmy. After dinner tonight, we'll go out for ice cream.
We get gold stars too.
So I heard.
Yeah, we get them as rewards. We can trade them in for prizes.
Cameron knew that Emily would try to earn gold stars to make him and Jessica happy. And the thought warmed his heart. His daughter was becoming a kind and caring young girl. He was proud to be her father. Jessica was proud too. Emily had clearly had a good day. She looked like she wanted to keep talking. She had only told her mother about the games she had played and the friends she had met, but Jessica knew there would be days when she talked about everything that she was learning too. She was a smart child. The car pulled up outside the restaurant. I would love to hear more about your day, but it looks like we're back now. I'm sure that your grandparents would love to hear about what you did today. Why don't you tell them?
Okay.
The three of them went inside. Thomas and Melissa looked up and smiled. How was school? Melissa asked. Emily told her about her performance and the friends that she had made. Thomas smiled at her, but then he saw Cameron heading toward the kitchen. How about a game? He asked, pointing to the chessboard he had already set up. The game was quick, and Cameron went into the kitchen when it was over. He cooked dinner, and everyone sat down to eat. After dinner, Cameron, Jessica, and Emily went out. Flora and Mickey accompanied them. There was an outdoor roller rink a few blocks away. Mickey carried several pairs of skates, and Jessica and Cameron each took one of Emily's hands. When they got to the rink, Cameron glanced down at Emily. I haven't forgotten about your ice cream. I'll be right back. She started clapping as he walked away. He came back a few minutes later with a large ice cream cone. Jessica smiled. Emmy, why don't you stay here with Mickey and eat your ice cream? Daddy and I are going to go skating. Emily frowned.
I want to skate too. Can I skate after I finish my ice cream?
Cameron nodded and laughed. Yes, you can skate too. Mickey set the skates down. Cameron took one of the pairs and squatted down next to Jessica. He glanced at her, smirked. Let me help you with your skates. She rolled her eyes at him as he took her shoes off. She was wearing pink socks with little red hearts on them. Cute, Cameron murmured as he started massaging her feet. A few minutes later, when he was still massaging them, she sighed. Cameron, putting the skates on doesn't take long. Oh, of course. He reached for the skates and put them on her feet, lacing them tightly. Then he grabbed another pair for himself. He sat down and put them on. Ready? He asked. Ready. Cameron stood up and reached for Jessica's hand, but he started sliding away before he could grab it. Flora snorted as she laced up her own skates. Jessica stumbled over to Cameron and took his hand. All right, let's go. Not too fast, please. They made their way around the rink slowly and clumsily. Jessica's long legs looked graceful despite her awkward movements. She was still wearing her hat. It hid her face, but it couldn't hide her long, flowing hair. Several spectators sighed in admiration. They didn't notice how unstable she and Cameron were. All they saw were a handsome man and a beautiful woman holding hands. Flora whizzed past them and turned around to face them. Jessica, I thought that you knew how to skate. It's been a while, and I used inclined skates, not roller skates. Well, let me teach you. If you learn to skate properly, maybe you can let go of Cameron. You look too lovey-dovey right now. She skated backward a few feet, turned around on one foot, and promptly crashed into another skater. She and the woman she had hit both ended up on their rear ends. Ouch, my butt! The woman cried. Flora got to her feet and skated over to the woman, who looked embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I'm not very good at turning. Flora helped her up. I'm the one who should apologize. I wasn't watching where I was going. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It looks like one of my friends is worried about me, though. She pointed at another woman who was skating over to them. That looked painful. Let's sit down for a while. The two women skated away. Flora sighed and turned around to talk to Jessica, but she and Cameron were on the other side of the rink by then. Flora sighed. Jessica had found true love. When will it be my turn? She wondered. Cameron and Jessica saw Emily waving at them. They cautiously skated back to the spot where they had left her. Mommy, Daddy, I'm done with my ice cream. Can I skate now? Of course. Cameron sat down next to her and helped her put her skates on. An hour later, they went back to the restaurant. As soon as they stopped inside, they saw Thomas sitting at a table. He had set up his chessboard again. He smiled at Cameron. How about a few more games? Thomas scored a few more quick victories that night. The next morning, Darcy drove over to the restaurant to drop Macy off. Have a good day at school. Macy got out of the car but didn't go into the restaurant right away. Aren't you coming in? Darcy shook her head. Cameron had sent her away the day before, and she still felt embarrassed. Macy shrugged and went inside, and Darcy drove away. "Are you girls ready?" Cameron asked. They nodded and followed him to his car. Jessica got into the front passenger seat, and the girls sat in the back, chatting happily. They arrived at the Waterstone Academy early enough to get a parking spot right outside the entrance. Cameron escorted the girls through the main door. He noticed that Emily looked much happier than she had the day before. He smiled and started to leave, but she ran after him.
Wait, Daddy! Can you come a little earlier to pick me up today?
He laughed softly. Yes, I'll pick you up earlier this afternoon. He waved at Jenny and headed back to his car, stopping at the main entrance for one last look at his daughter. She was still chatting with Macy, and a few of their classmates had joined them. Jessica smiled at him when he got back into his car. "How was she when you left her?" "Much better. She did ask me to pick her up earlier today, though. I'm sure I'll get used to her schedule."
"I'm sure you will. I can't wait to hear all about her day. She likes learning."
"And she's good at it. She's the smartest little girl," Cameron said. Jessica snorted. "Now you're the one who sounds like her." "Really?" Cameron smirked, but then his expression turned serious. He sighed. "What's wrong?" "He's in school now. And you'll be working. Looks like I'll be all alone." Jessica frowned as an image of Cameron alone in the restaurant appeared in her mind. She didn't want him to feel lonely.
"Why don't you come with me? You can spend the morning with me after you take her to school. Then you can head back to the restaurant to make her lunch."
"I can't go in to deliver it to her, though."
"No, you can't. You would have to leave it with the teachers, so you wouldn't actually be able to see her."
Cameron smiled faintly. "It's a good idea, though. I'm flattered that you're trying to ease my loneliness." Jessica blushed. "Well, since you're already blushing, now is probably a good time for me to tell you that I found a little lingerie shop just a few blocks away from the restaurant. It looks like they've got a lot of black silk items in there. Shall we go take a look?" Jessica pinched him playfully.
"You're terrible. If you're really determined to buy something, you can go there yourself." But before she could finish, he leaned over and kissed her. She blushed again but gazed at him lovingly. "We should go. Someone might see us," she whispered.
Cameron sighed dramatically. "Okay, fine. Should we head over to the company? Today's the big day." Jessica thought for a moment.
"Yes, let's go. There will be a lot of people there, right?"
"Yeah, there will. We can watch the ceremony from the back if it's too crowded." He started the car and drove to New Moon Bay. Several minutes later, he pulled into the parking lot in front of the main building. A few security officers were patrolling the entrance to the lot, but they waved him through. He and Jessica got out and looked around. A stage had been set up in the plaza, and several rows of chairs faced it. Olaf, Mickey, Bogdan, and Eric were on the stage, and the chairs were full of gawking spectators who were chattering excitedly about their surroundings. "Look at how fancy all of the cars are! What do you know about the company?" "Not much, but it looks like they're going to be sharing their office space with a lot of important people." "Yeah, there are definitely a lot of high-profile companies in the building. Amethyst Entertainment is here, along with Moonshadow and a branch of Emmy's Cafe." "Emmy's Cafe? I've heard of it. It's unique. And its membership cards are highly sought after. People pay a lot of money to become members. I'm just amazed that the building has changed so much. I remember when it was the Montlake building." As more and more cars pulled into the parking lot, the conversation shifted toward all of the big-shot guests that the crowd recognized. "The Campbells have just arrived. And that man over there looks like Richard Black. And I also see the Masons and the Starks. And that looks like Luke Tucker right behind them. Look over there. There are representatives from the West Unlimited and Moonlight Studios. Damn, I've never seen so many important people in one place." As the audience was settling down, several more cars pulled into the parking lot. The crowd gasped, and everyone started nudging each other and pointing. "Do you recognize that black car? That's the Balboa's car. And that one is the Templetons. And the Langtons have just arrived too. What? No way! Now all we need are the Lees, and San Diego's top 4 families will all be here. I don't think we'll see the Lees today. Didn't you hear about their downfall? They're now only 3 powerful families, but seeing them together is incredible. It's terrifying, too." Olaf glanced down at the growing crowd. Most of the seats were full, and the steady stream of cars had slowed down. It was time for the ceremony to begin. He reached for the microphone. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Many of you already know me, so I'll get straight to the point and tell you what I'm doing here. The Emmy Corporation is holding its opening ceremony today, and I was lucky enough to be invited up here onto the stage because I have some shares in the company. The directors and executives in the crowd smiled faintly, and many of them stared at Olaf with envy in their eyes. They knew that his position with the company could help him rise again. He was highly ranked on the Sky ranking board, and the only thing he didn't have was a strong shield. Olaf cleared his throat and continued. Mickey and I will be here today as the company's representatives. I have just a few announcements and introductions before we begin. He gestured at the people sitting behind him on the stage. This is Eric Sumner, president of the Amethyst Entertainment Company, which started its operations today. If you're interested in collaborating with the company, please get in touch with him. Next to him is Bogdan Ionescu, the chief executive officer of the Emmy Corporation. Every quarter, 10 people will be offered a mission. Contact Bogdan if you would like to be considered. Mickey smiled. After talking with Cameron, he decided to offer paid vacation time to anyone working on a mission. Most of the people who accepted missions were so focused that they didn't want to take time off, but he wanted them to have a choice. Olaf gestured at the building. We've got some great food and beverage options inside. Moonshadow's appeal speaks for itself, and you already know about Emmy's Cafe. Members should enjoy this one as much as the main location. Wayne Long, the king of cooking, is the head chef here. Okay, that's all for me. I'll hand the microphone over to Mickey now. The crowd burst into enthusiastic, almost thunderous applause. Olaf passed Eric on his way back to his seat and smiled. Eric tried to smile back, but felt like he had gone numb from shock. The crowd's reaction to Olaf's speech had caught him off guard. He had expected a tamer response. There wasn't normally thunderous applause at meetings, and he had to remind himself that he wasn't at a meeting. He was on a stage in front of row upon row of business leaders, and they had all just learned his name. The applause died down, and Mickey stood up. He was as shocked as Eric. He reached for the microphone and stared down at the crowd, his heart racing. I'm honored to be here today for the opening ceremony. I won't say too much about the company itself. I'll leave that for the professionals. He gestured at Bogdan, and then he sat down again, leaving Bogdan wondering when he had become a professional. From the back of the crowd, Jessica snorted. That was short and sweet. Cameron smiled. He's not interested in management. He's kind of like Olaf in that regard. Let's head back. I need to make Emmy's lunch. They got into his car and went back to the restaurant.
Thank you for listening to A God Among Men. Please subscribe to The Story Thief to get instantly notified on new episodes. And stay tuned for more.